you don't exist. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look at better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheap again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the second part of What If Naruto Enters JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Special note, this fanfic is written in a masterpiece of kyugan on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. A week had passed since the dismissal and subsequent arrest of Mizuki from the campus, and already things were starting to shape up around East Konohagakuen as the man's influence faded away. Several students and faculty members coming forward to testify against the man, revealing how he'd blackmailed them into doing his dirty work, even going so far as to accidentally misplace school funds for his own uses. Each and every confession, each name on the list of testimonies, was yet another nail in Mizuki's coffin as a teacher. The way things were looking for the sap, by the time he was out of the hospital, he'd be lucky to get a job at an obedience school even if he managed to avoid jail time. Unsurprisingly, the one person that could care less for all this was the hero who knocked the bastard off his high horse, literally. Though after a week of repetitive crowing, the tail had begun to wear thin, and Mizuki was like, "Die," and I was like, "F that." Naruto explained, demonstrating to Choji yet again how he'd pummeled the instructor as they walked towards the school gates, classes having finished for the day. And then I just sent him flying and he was like all arg. And then I, Mendoku's, give it a rest will you? Shikamaru muttered, waving a hand dismissively. You've told us 100 times already. And even if you didn't, we were there, we saw what happened. You're just jealous you didn't clobber the dick when you had the chance. Naruto huffed, turning his head to the side in a childish sulk, earning sigh from the lazy genius as he shook his head. Whatever soothes your ego, Shikamaru muttered, rolling his eyes at the blonde's childishness, only to blink as he spotted a familiar face at the gate scant seconds before she ducked back out of sight. Her again. Her? Naruto repeated, blinking in confusion as he glanced around, barely catching sight of a blue head of hair ducking behind a pillar. Her who? He asked, elbowing the Nara coyly, a shit-eating grin in place. Don't tell me you picked up a girlfriend, Shika-chan. As if, Shikamaru muttered, slugging the blonde in the shoulder. For all the good it would do, it's that girl from North Konohagakuen. He pointed out, you know, the uptown girl you risked your life for. Naruto blinked, looking at the girl in shock as she stuck her head round the pillar, a shiver racing up and down his spine as he recalled the frightened pale eyes looking into his own just before everything went black. Oh yeah, her, he muttered, sweat dropping as the girl ducked back out of sight when she spotted him looking her way. What's she doing hanging around here? I've noticed her hanging around the neighborhood after school hours for about a week now, Shikamaru admitted, earning a look of surprise from Naruto, who most likely hadn't noticed a damn thing the entire time. Though judging by the fact she was sitting by your hospital bed when we came to get you, I think it's safe to assume she's here to see you. Girl must have weird tastes. Eat me, Naruto muttered, slugging his friend in the shoulder even as he flushed at his words, turning to look at the girl over his shoulder just in time to see her duck back out of sight, her face even redder than his own. Hinata's POV. He saw me. Hinata gasped, the poor girl's heart pounding like a hummingbird's as she pressed her back against the wall, trying and failing to fight down the flush that was making her light up like a tomato. Oh no. What do I do if he comes this way? What if he doesn't remember me? What do I say? Hey, Naruto's voice called out, the Hyuga heiress squeaking in surprise as she glanced up to see the blonde standing to her left, his blue eyes looking her over with concern. You're the girl from the other day, right? He asked, heedless of the relief that spread through her at his recognition. You feeling all right? You weren't hurt, were you? No, Hinata stammered, fighting down her flush as best she could as she bowed her head towards the teen, clutching her book bag to her chest, flushed and shook her head, lowering her gaze to bide her red face. I'm fine, thanks to you. Well, that's a relief, Naruto grinned, Hinata's heart soaring at the kind, open smile, only to blink as he placed a hand on her head. You sure you're all right though? You're looking a little flushed there. I'm fine, Hinata squeaked, backing away from the boy's touch, turning her head to the side to hide how her face had turned magenta. I'd heard you'd been released from the hospital, she admitted, gripping her book bag so tightly it was a wonder it didn't burst open. I thought I'd come see how you were doing to thank you. That's so, Naruto wondered, blinking at the girl's bizarre, to him anyway, behavior before grinning confidently. In that case, rest easy, I'm fit as a fiddle, he assured her, flexing a muscle and patting it for emphasis. Trust me, It'll take more than a car to keep me down. Hinata couldn't help but giggle at the blonde's open bravado, the heiress blushing and covering her mouth, only to blink as she spied the approving look her rescuer was sending her. You should laugh more, he complimented, leaning down to look her better in the eye. It suits you a lot better than hiding your head all the time. Hey lovebirds, a voice called out, the duo jumping, having quite forgotten they weren't alone. Turning to find Shikamaru and Choji standing off to the side, the Nara looking torn between boredom and amusement as he thumbed over his shoulder. As amusing as this is, Choji and I gotta head home for the day, he muttered, turning on his heel and walking off. You two enjoy your date, just don't forget the condom or things get more than troublesome. The hell you talking about, Shikabaka? Naruto roared, the blonde hurling obscenities and whatever he could find lying on the street after the pair while Hinata collapsed against a wall, her face a bright red as she hyperventilated in the shadow of the wall, unused to such crass comments, even said in jest as was clearly the case. Or was it a joke? She wondered, peering at her surroundings with a hint of trepidation, spying a few of the other students loitering around, some of them done up like stereotypical punks, pompadours and all. The few girls she saw clearly not the type you'd want to take home to meet your parents. Oh no, I don't think I'd be ready for that. Sorry about that, Naruto muttered, Hinata's back straightening as the blonde returned, looking just as embarrassed as she was, if that was even physically possible, scratching the back of his head to rid himself of his flush. Don't let Shikamaru bother you. The lazy bastard doesn't know when to keep his mouth shut half the time. It's okay, Hinata stammered, sighing in relief and a bit of disappointment she was surprised to note, as she bowed her head towards the blonde, her face still red from her earlier embarrassment. I'm sorry for causing so much trouble. Hey now, what are you apologizing for? Naruto wondered, patting the shocked girl on the head, prompting her to look up as he thumbed over his shoulder, his features lined with mild annoyance. He's my idiot friend. Hell, if anything, I'm the one who should be apologizing. Hinata giggled, her hair fluttering as she looked up into the blonde's smiling face, only to blink, her features turning a bright crimson once more as her stomach chose that moment to let her know she was hungry, scant seconds before Naruto's own stomach voiced its hunger. How time flies, Naruto muttered, scratching the back of his head in embarrassment, even as Hinata wished she could find a rock to crawl under. Listen, I was gonna grab a bite before heading home. Care to join me? Hinata flushed and lowered her head, nodding slightly in embarrassment, which quickly changed to surprise when Naruto grabbed her hand. Come on, he urged, grinning at her encouragingly. I know this great ramen stand nearby. He trailed off at the look of embarrassed confusion in her eyes. What, you've never tried ramen before? He asked, looking shocked to his core as she nodded. That's terrible. Hang on, I'll change that. Hinata fought down a flush as Naruto dragged her down the street by her hand, feeling a warm little flutter in her heart as she stared at his back. Elsewhere, Hyuga Neji glared at the guards as he listened to their report, the beginnings of headache starting to grow within his brow. Apparently his cousin had taken it upon herself to not only ditch her bodyguards and go running off to the east side again, she'd even gone so far as to switch off her cell phone so they couldn't track her like before. If it weren't for the hell this was doing to his composure, Neji would actually admit he was a little impressed with the girl's daring. Normally she wouldn't dream of going against her father's orders or his own instructions. The fact she'd been doing so for over a week meant that the girl was finally starting to develop a backbone. Contrary to popular belief, it wasn't Hinata herself that incurred Neji's ire. If anything, he considered his cousin to be quite charming. When she wasn't hiding inside his shell due to her numerous insecurities. It was simply said insecurities that drove the elder Hyuga up the wall, as more often than not he was the one who had to deal with them. What with Hayashi-sama's busy schedule and his wife's recent death. Still, as much as he applauded Hinata's taking the first steps towards breaking out of her shell, the fact remained that it was his job to ensure her protection. And after the complete balls up that had happened the last time she'd given him the slip, Neji wasn't about to leave anything to chance. According to our contacts, she was last seen on a bus heading to the east side. He instructed, holding up a photo that showed the number of the bus in question for all to see. Start from the bus depot and work your way out. He pulled out a second photo, this one depicting a picture of Naruto beating the shit out of a group of punks that he'd found on Hayashi-sama's desk. She probably went to see this guy, for whatever reason, so try to gather as much information on him as possible. Problems in paradise, a voice called out, Neji frowning as he turned to face the slender figure leaning against the wall, dressed in the same male North Konoha Gakuen uniform as the elder Hyuga, the shadows concealing the figure's face, save for the brown eyes that were regarding him with amusement. You really need to lighten up, Neji, all this worrying will make you bald. Forgive me if I find it hard to relax when my cousin is in the company of the local street punk, Neji muttered, regarding the shadowed figure with a stern frown. It's my job to keep her safe, and I can't do that if she keeps running off to check on some bleached Yankee. A bleached Yankee she brought back from the dead, no less, the figure mused, smiling coyly at Neji's glare, which was sharp enough to cut through steel. Aw. What's the matter, Neji? You feeling a little jealous now that Hinata-chan's looking at other boys? I never took you for the possessive type. Don't get any ideas, Neji muttered, his eyes narrowing at the suggestive comment. Hinata-sama merely needs to learn the importance of her position. As the heir to the Hyuga family, she can't go running off whenever she feels like it. You're worried about her, the figure teased, smirking coyly as Neji twitched at the accusation. It's not that embarrassing to admit. You two have been playmates since you were kids. It's only natural you want to look out for her. You're delusional, Neji muttered, his expression unreadable as he turned his back on the figure. The only reason I'm doing this is because Hayashi-sama ordered it. If I hadn't been charged with her protection, I'd have nothing to do with her at all. And with that he marched off, the guards following in his wake, the figure watching them go with a solemn expression. Before sighing disappointedly, Neji, when are you going to get over the past? Ikaraku ramen, bliss, Naruto sighed, setting the now empty bowl down with a flourish, sighing in satisfaction as he let the liquid euphoria settle into his bones. Remind me to say a prayer for the guy who invented ramen next time I go to the shrine. You mean like you do every year? I teased, earning a giggle from Hinata as the girl finished her own bowl, modestly surprised at how good the simple noodle broth tasted. As the heir to the Hyuga estate, she was used to all sorts of fancy dining and cuisine, cooked by the finest chefs from the freshest stock. But here she was, dining out at a simple ramen stand with a boy she'd only met last week, and loving every minute of it. Chuchai, the owner of the bar, had complimented her on her looks and warned Naruto to keep his hands to himself, while Chuchai's daughter, had teased the two of them shamelessly, something the servants at home would never dare do for fear of losing their jobs. It was a more relaxed atmosphere than what awaited her at home. There, she felt like an actor in some demanding, well-scripted play, where everything was carried out according to the letter for fear of upsetting the critics. Here, for the first time, she truly felt as if she were her own person, rather than a doll that had been dressed up. There were no high expectations, no demands or rules to follow, no image to uphold. She was just a normal girl having ramen with her friend, acquaintance, she pondered, peeking at Naruto out the corner of her eye as the blonde chatted away with the Ikaraku family without a care in the world. Which by all accounts he probably didn't have. Just what is Naruto-kun to me, and what do I mean to him? Hinata, Naruto called out, having learned her name when he'd introduced her to the Ikarakas, the heiress snapping out of her thoughts only to blink as the blonde hellion wiped the corner of her mouth with a napkin. You had some broth on your face there. Hinata flushed scarlet and looked away in embarrassment, causing Naruto to blink and to leer at them, practically brimming with a desire to tease the poor girl. So you say you bumped into each other last week? Chuchai mused, no doubt reading Hinata's embarrassment in her posture, and hoping to divert attention away from the girl before she suffered a full-on breakdown. Where was it? Hinata flinched, gripping her skirt tightly at the memory of how they'd met, only to blink as Naruto placed a hand on her shoulder. We bumped into each other outside school, he admitted, grinning sheepishly as he scratched his cheek. Actually, you could say she kinda ran me over. I'm sorry, Hinata stammered, flushing scarlet as Chuchai laughed and giggled, grateful for the blonde covering up what really happened, Naruto waving her thanks aside with his usual cheerful grin. Relax, it was just as much my fault for not watching where I was going, he assured her. Besides, if we hadn't bumped into each other, we wouldn't be sitting here right now, would we? And what a shame that'd be. Giggled, Hinata flushing at the look the smile the older girl sent her way, while Chuchai teased Naruto about taking proper precautions unless he wanted to be banned for life, the blonde's embarrassed squawks earning a giggle from the two girls. Later, Naruto grinned as he walked down the street of the shopping district, showing Hinata where everyone hung out and window shopping as they went. The girl had never been to the shopping arcade, seeing as everything she needed had been provided by her father, and so was enjoying the chance to look around without being dragged off at the slightest hint of trouble. Naruto was currently messing with a gashapon machine, the blonde apparently having a passion for collecting all sorts of cool stuff no matter what that lazy-ass Shikamaru says. Hinata looking up as he let out a jubilant yell as the latest one turned up good results. Yatta, the blonde cried, tears of joy falling from his eyes as he held up a miniature muscular figure of what looked like Mad Max in a kung fu pose. I finally got the Kenshiro figure for my collection, he cheered, dancing around, earning a laugh from Hinata as she watched him disturb the other shoppers. Naruto-kun is so energetic, the heiress thought wonderingly. He lives life to the fullest, no matter what. She flinched as she recalled how clammy his face had felt as she held it after the crash, and I almost took that from him, she whispered, holding a hand to her chest. Hey baby, you alone? A nasal voice called out, prompting her to turn round to face three men, dressed up in cheap, yet expensive-looking suits. Wanna go for some karaoke? Hinata flinched and took a step back, only for another guy to put a hand on her arm. Aw, come on. No need to be shy, he said, leering at her. We won't hurt ya. Hinata tried to struggle, only for the man to pull her closer, a leer on his face as he reached a hand for her other wrist. A fist came out of nowhere and nailed the punk in the teeth, sending him soaring into a lamppost, falling limply to the floor. Who the F? The second yelled, only to receive a kick to the teeth, silencing him and sending him sailing over a bench to land in a fountain. The third punk, a short, weasel-like man with an obvious skin condition, turned round, dagger in hand to face the assailant, only to drop the weapon and stutter in fear. And Naruto-sama, he stuttered, nervously rubbing his hands together as he peered up at the irate blonde towering over him, his rat-like eyes twitching as they sought out an escape route. H, how you doin'? Fine till I smelled you skulking around Ikagoya, Naruto muttered, eyeing the older man like he was something he'd stepped in. I thought I told you bastards never to set foot here again. The man began wringing his hands, looking up at the blonde with a desperate smile. Of course, I apologize, he stammered, backing away. I'll just be going now. Naruto sighed as he watched the rat run, leaving his cronies lying about in a daze. Sorry about that. I forgot rats like that always sneak around looking for people they think are vulnerable. He glared after Ikagoya. Next time something like that happens, scream for help and kick him in the balls. He grinned, not that Ikagoya's got any to speak of. Hinata, who flushed, though whether it was because he'd rescued her again, or due to his cavalier attitude, was beyond her. The two of them looking up at the sound of approaching voices, Naruto sweat dropping as he espied the mall security appearing at the edges of the crowd. We'd better get out of here, he muttered, grabbing Hinata's wrist gently and moving her through the crowd. Trust me, the last thing you want is to get something like this put down on your permanent record. Hinata nodded, knowing all too well what her father would do if he received a phone call from the police, the heiress allowing Naruto to lead her through the crowds, who parted helpfully to let them pass, making their way to one of the numerous fire exits that lined the walls, though it was clear from the state of disrepair and graffiti that someone had disabled the alarm some time ago. Rule number 1 for surviving on the east side, always have an escape route, Naruto instructed her, grinning as he held the door open for her, and if all else fails, never look back to see if they're catching up. Hinata nodded, stepping through the door, Naruto following suit, leading them through the parking lot and up a small hill round the back, stopping at the base of a large tree. The Hyuga heiress gaping in amazement as she took in the view, which encompassed the entire town and the reserve, the sun a dull orange as it set below the horizon. I always come here to think, Naruto admitted, taking a seat near the base of the trunk, patting the ancient wood affectionately. Dunno why, but this tree's always been good for calming me down. He patted the earth next to him, gesturing for the shy girl to join him, Hinata accepting the invitation with a blush as their arms touched, turning her gaze back to the sunset, a feeling of calm washing over her, seemingly emanating from the wood of the ancient tree behind her. Curious, she placed her head against the bark, closing her eyes as she felt the thrumming of life within the ancient oak. You asleep? Naruto asked, causing her to jump, embarrassed at being caught out. Maybe I should take you home. Hinata shook her head, looking dismally down at the floor. I don't want to go back there yet, she stated, gripping her skirt in distress, earning a look of confusion from Naruto, only for the blonde to sigh, bopping her on the head gently. I got it, he sighed, smirking softly as she blinked up at him in confusion. I won't bring it up again, he assured, beaming at her blush before reaching into his pocket with a grin. That reminds me, he muttered, pulling out a keychain that he won from the gashapon and holding it out for her. Here, it's yours. Hinata blinked as she looked at the weird rabbit-like creatures, one black the other white, with blue and red forehead gems dangling from the keychain. Forgive me, but what are these? She asked, finding them adorable beyond words. They're called Makona, I think, Naruto replied, leaning back against the trunk. They're part of some series by Clamp, so I wouldn't know much on them. He grinned at the girl, causing her to flush. They kinda reminded me of you. Hinata felt her heart speed up at the thought, holding the adorable keychain close to her chest in joy. Thank you, she whispered, bowing her head in gratitude, only to blink as he gently bopped her on the head again. No need to lower your head, he stated, mock frowning, ruffling her hair. Just be yourself, okay? Hinata giggled lightly as he messed up her hair, before looking up at the teen, startled at how close their faces were. Naruto's own eyes widened as her realized their proximity, a faint blush rising to their cheeks. "There you are," a familiar, cultured voice called out, snapping the two out of their reverie as Hinata saw, to her disappointment and alarm, the calm, handsome features of her cousin standing with a small division of bodyguards. Konoha Hill. "So this is where you ran off to?" Neji muttered dully. "I thought you had a little more sense than to ditch your guards to go gallivanting with some Yankee dropout." Naruto bristled at the older teen's tone, feeling his knuckles itch as his patented asshole detector started blaring. Hinata merely lowered her head and stood up, dusting herself off, Naruto getting to his feet beside her. "Come on now," Neji ordered, holding out a hand, his tone brooking no argument or discussion. "It's time for us to go home. Your father is waiting and I've wasted enough time tracking you down as it is." Hinata flinched, moving to take a step forward, knowing better than to argue with her cousin in these circumstances, only to blink as Naruto's hand landed on her shoulder, the blonde pushing the girl behind him protectively. "And just who the hell are you supposed to be?" he growled, not liking the way the older teen spoke at all, his hair spiking slightly as the older Hyuga ignored him in favor of locking gazes with Hinata behind him. "I'm talking to you, asswipe. Manners dictate that one must first introduce oneself before asking another's name," the elder Hyuga pointed out, his expression dismissive as he regarded the younger teen like he wasn't worth the effort. "However, since it is apparent you have no idea who you're dealing with, my name is Hyuga Neji of the Hyuga family. Hinata-sama's elder cousin and the one responsible for her safety. As such, I must ask that you kindly step aside. It is already past Hinata-sama's curfew, and she's already in enough trouble as it is for sneaking out without her escort." "That's not what I meant when I asked who you were, asshole." Naruto spat, glaring at the elder teen, his eyes like flints. "Where the hell do you get off talking to her like that? What'd she ever do to you?" Neji scowled, a shadow seeming to cross the elder Hyuga's features for a split second, only to vanish, replaced with his usual composed indifference, though Naruto swore there was a hint of anger in those pale eyes. "I'll warn you one more time," he intoned, several bodyguards lining up behind him menacingly. "Step aside or be moved. Your choice. Bring it on." Naruto scoffed, cracking his knuckles as he eyed the guards with an eager grin. "I can handle anything your rent-a-thugs can throw at me." He trailed off, blinking in confusion as Hinata placed a small hand on his shoulder, the blonde looking back to see the younger Hyuga shaking her head, before stepping out from behind him. "Thank you, Naruto-kun," she offered, bowing demurely to the confused blonde, a sad smile adorning her features. "But Neji-nason is right, it's time I should be going home." She bowed her head once more. "Thank you for today, it was fun." "Hinata," Naruto murmured, eyeing the girl with confusion as she turned on her heel and walked away, his eyes locking onto her smaller than him anyway, frame, which seemed to tense up the closer she got to her cousin. "I'm glad to see you haven't taken complete leave of your senses," the elder Hyuga muttered approvingly, ignoring Naruto as he turned on his heel. "As the heir to the Hyuga family, it would be best if you abstained from associating with such people." Hinata raised her head, looking desperate. "But Naruto-kun is different," Neji interrupted, scoffing. "Don't be delusional. Now come on, it's getting late." He gripped her wrist tightly, causing her to wince. "Quit dawdling. Do you know how much manpower I had to?" Whatever Neji was going to say was cut off as he had to dodge a rock hurled at his head. It sailed down the hill and crashed through the rear window of the waiting limo, startling the guards there. "Oi, you ignoring me again, pissant?" Naruto's annoyed voice called out, causing the Hyuga to turn to face him. The teen was standing with one hand in his coat pocket as he pointed at him with the other. "Cause that just plain pisses me off." Neji scowled at the teen as he nodded to the men around him. "You'll regret that," he promised, as the last of the glass fell from the car. Naruto merely smirked and moved into a stance, eyeing the thugs with an air of confidence. "The check's in the mail," he shot back, eyeing the bodyguards as they encircled him warily. "They're all packing heat, but something tells me they won't shoot unless shot at first." He moved a little to the right. "They're all carrying stun rods though. Haven't fought those in a while. Better watch my back." He grinned at the thugs and gestured with his fingers for them to approach. The first two did, charging for his sides, hoping to catch him in between them. Naruto responded by charging for the closer one, kicking at the dirt and blinding the bastard with soil and grass, before punching him in the stomach, hard. He grabbed the guard's tie as the man collapsed and used it to gag him as he grabbed his shirt, tossing the goon into his partner, who had been trying to take the rear. The pounding of footprints alerted him to the arrival of thug number 3, who tried to club him over the head with his stun rod, a combination of a taser and a collapsible nightstick, only for the blonde to grab the arm, break it in two with a twist of his own and hurl the screaming thug face first into the tree. Naruto turned to face the remaining thugs, who were eyeing him cautiously, like the last surviving gladiators against a tiger. There would be no reckless lunges now. They'd seen he wasn't an ordinary kid. "What's the matter?" he mocked. "Too scared to take me on?" He began to jog on the spot, keeping the blood flowing as he eyed them warily. "Sheesh, some bodyguards. Guess you get what you pay for." They approached him stealthily, with the air of professionals, stun rods at the ready as they moved in closer. Abruptly one charged him, coming in low to avoid any grapples. Naruto responded by sliding at the man's feet, causing him to stumble back, only to receive a kick to the chin that made him spit teeth, followed by a leg sweep that took the legs out from under him. Rolling to the side to avoid the last thug, Naruto got to his feet and lunging forwards, getting under the man's guard and delivering a punch to the elbow, causing the thug to drop his weapon out of reflex. He then spun on his heel and delivered a heel kick to the man's jaw, sending him spiraling away to land on his face, 7 feet away, as the last guard falls. "And then there was one," the blonde muttered, eyeing the long-haired Hyuga confidently. "Care to try your luck, pal?" Neji eyed the guards with an air of intrigue, clearly impressed with how easily the blonde had laid them flat, before turning to regard the younger teen with a glimmer of respect. "I underestimated you, Uzumaki Naruto. You've heard of me," Naruto noted, quirking a brow at the elder Hyuga, his eyes watching him like a hawk as he stepped closer. "Didn't know I'd gotten so famous uptown." "I know your name from the hospital records," Neji corrected, striding towards the teen. "Your reputation, however, I know only via word of mouth. The Yakuza in this area all live in fear of a blonde hellion who tears into their ranks with the strength of a humanoid typhoon." He got right up into the blonde's face. "They say whoever crosses his path is left lying as if caught in the wake of a hurricane. So great is his effect on the gangs, that people refer to him as the Hurricane King." The two males eyed each other for a moment, the moans of the guards ignored as they locked gazes, sky blue and ivory white refusing to give an inch. "I have to admit, I was wondering just how the man would live up to the legend," Neji continued, his eyes narrowing sharply. "However, while I'll admit you're far from the brainless idiot I took you for, what little I've seen leaves much to be desired." He reached up and undid the top button of his uniform. "That being said, I can't turn down such a blatant challenge, especially one from a thug like you." Naruto scoffed, eyeing the older teen angrily. "So I'm a thug, am I?" he asked, cracking his neck joints. "Not gonna deny that, I sure as hell fit the bill." He grinned at the older teen. "So what? You need to learn your place," Neji replied, hands at his side as he looked his opponent in the eye. "And I'm going to show it to you." Naruto snorted, a vein pounding on his forehead as he cracked his neck joints. "Say that he charged forwards. After you win." Neji dodged to the side, seeming to flow like water as he dodged every one of Naruto's strikes, actually pushing them out of the way with the flat of his hands. "Quick ducking and face me," Naruto yelled, going for a leg sweep only for the Hyuga to leap gracefully overhead and land behind him. "Damn, he's good," the blonde thought grudgingly. "Haven't worked this hard in a fight since I first met Lee-senpai." He grimaced at how easily the older teen had trounced his ass, especially considering the big gutsy speech he'd given about how he'd take the dojo sign in less than a minute. Ever since then he'd been going back to the dojo for a rematch, only to end up as a permanent member after it turned out he was enjoying the fights he'd come to regard as spars. "I've never managed to lay a hand on senpai," the blonde muttered, eyeing the Hyuga, who was standing as calm as it could be while he was beginning to wear down, evident from his heavy breathing. "This guy's not much faster though, but he hasn't struck at me once." He leapt forwards, arms at the ready, feinted to the left, only to strike with the right. Neji dodged to the side, grabbed his arm and struck his finger into the side. Pain screamed its way up Naruto's arm to his brain, causing him to yell and leap back, holding his good hand to his right shoulder, which had gone suddenly numb. "What the?" he gasped, eyeing the Hyuga warily as he grit his teeth in pain. "What the hell do you do?" "I merely pressed a pressure point on your arm, rendering it completely numb," Neji stated calmly, hair blowing as the breeze picked up. "I'd recommend giving up, unless you like the idea of a return trip to the hospital." Naruto spat, annoyed at the fact he had yet to land a single punch on the bastard, and glared at his arm, blinking as he noticed the feeling returning to his fingers. "Bastard must have screwed up somehow," he deduced, eyeing the Hyuga cautiously. "I'll pretend it's still limp, then catch him by surprise." He charged forwards again, kicking up a lump of dirt to distract the Hyuga as he charged in low. Neji, anticipating the move, dodged to the side and went to numb the other arm, when he was forced to dodge a sluggish punch from the other. "Impressive," the Hyuga conceded. "Your arm should be completely paralyzed, but slow sluggish movements won't touch me." The hyuga was forced to dodge to the side as a transparent arm almost mashed his head into the tree trunk, sending pulpwood everywhere. He stared at the blonde in shock, before narrowing his eyes dangerously. "I see," he muttered. "So you did receive one after Hinata-sama healed you." "The hell you talking about?" Naruto demanded, disappointed that his hidden ace had missed, pointing at the specter as it hovered behind him. "You telling me you can see this thing?" "Quite clearly," Neji admitted, dusting himself of as he spoke, the fact of which proves it's fairly powerful, certainly better than I'd have expected. He narrowed his eyes, moving into a slightly different stance from before, his guard tighter. "I won't make the same mistake of getting in range again." "So you finally decided to quit dancing around and just scrap it out, huh?" Naruto mocked, grinning eagerly as he cracked his knuckles, popping his neck joints to limber up. "Let's go then," he yelled, lunged forwards at a run, the spirit behind him lashing out with a fierce right hook, only for Neji to lean back out of the way, inhaling deeply as he did so. Abruptly, Naruto felt an immense pressure land on his shoulders, driving him to his knees as he fought for breath. The spirit hovered limply behind him for a moment as if in concern, before fading to nothingness, leaving him doubly exhausted. "Bastard," he gasped, glaring up at Neji as he fought to get up. "What the hell did you do?" "That is for me to know, and you to lie there trying to figure out," Neji replied, standing over the fallen blonde, an impassive, almost dismissive look in his eyes as rain fell from the sky, outlining an invisible figure hovering behind the teen as he watched the blonde gasp for air. "You never stood a chance against me," he pointed out, his tone bereft of emotion. "Merely stating a fact. I suggest you forget you ever met Hinata-sama, unless you wish to disappear." With that, the older teen gestured to the guards, who were picking themselves up, and nodded, grabbing Hinata by the shoulder. "Let us go," he ordered, leading the worried girl down to the limousine, the engine starting up and driving off after a minute or so. As the limo drives away, Naruto clenched his teeth as he fought to breathe, but the pressure refused to lighten until the sound of the limo had faded away. And when it did so abruptly, causing him to collapse. "Damn it," he hissed, struggling to regain his footing, only to finally pass out from exhaustion, lying in the rain in the middle of a small imprint in the ground. After a moment, a shadow stepped out from behind the tree, walking towards the teen and standing over him. Reaching down, the figure pried Naruto out of the dent he'd made with his body, supporting him with his shoulder with barely a grunt. "That one was far beyond you," Naruto-kun Rock Lee noted, eyeing where Neji had last stood with an intense look in his eyes. "That is as you are right now, at least," he corrected, grunting slightly as he switched the unconscious blonde onto his back, carrying him down the hill, the rain pelting them with every step they took. "All that trouble because you decided to run off," Neji muttered, the elder hyuga scowling at his cousin as he sat across from her in the back of the limo, the girl flinching and lowering her head, her expression miserable as she sat between two of the guards, who were looking the worse for wear after their tussle with the Hurricane King. "Really now, you'd think almost killing him in a crash would have been enough." Hinata flinched and Neji sighed, annoyed at her weakness. A normal woman would have at least struck back verbally, or glared silently at the accusation, but then a normal woman wouldn't have to be picked up by bodyguards from school. "Now then," he continued, "I hope that this has taught you not to go wandering." He paused, a strange feeling going through his body. Hinata letting out a shriek of terror as her cousin's chest was abruptly slashed open, Neji doubling over with a curse, coughing up blood as the bodyguards cried out in alarm. "I'm fine," the elder hyuga snapped, pushing the guards away, pressing a hand to his chest, where several thin cuts had suddenly appeared, slicing through his shirt in the process. "Watch the damned road." The guards settled down, one trying, ineffectively, to comfort a sobbing Hinata, whilst another pulled out an emergency field kit and handed it to Neji. "How?" the hyuga muttered, tracing one of the cuts tenderly as iodine was dabbed onto the wound. It wasn't deep enough to permanently scar, not that he cared for such things, but it had appeared so swiftly, and the wounds left behind so thin, that the blood had literally sprayed as it exited. Could this be his ability? Neji wondered, his eyes widening as he recalled how he'd narrowly dodged the blow from Naruto's stand back on the hill. "I never even felt it," he muttered, staring out into the rain as the guard proceeded to disinfect the wound, scowling at the outline of the tree in the moonlight. "Uzumaki Naruto," he muttered, a light of intrigue shining in his eyes. "A most interesting person indeed." The next day, Naruto awoke to find himself wrapped up in a futon, a warm cloth on his forehead to ward off the cold. He looked over and spied his clothes hanging by the window, drying in the sun as a radio announced the weather for the day to be clear, where he began, sitting up from the futon, looking up as the shogi door opened, admitting Lee with a bowl of soup. "Oh, you're awake," The older teen asked, setting the tray down and offering the bowl to the blonde. Eat up, you were half frozen when I brought you here. Naruto nodded dumbly, looking round the room to find it neat and orderly, with several books on martial arts and tai chi littering the shelves, as well as a practice block for katas in the corner. I'm in your room, he asked, earning a nod from Lee as he said about pouring some green tea into a cup. How'd I get here? I found you after those guys left, Lee admitted. I'm sorry to say I followed you, but I didn't feel like interfering. Naruto moaned. Not only had he had his ass handed to him by some long-haired prick, Lee-senpai had seen him. Things weren't looking up for our hero. That dirty bastard used some sort of weird trick to make it hard to breathe, he muttered, digging into his soup. If he hadn't done that, I'd have taken him. I noticed that, Lee admitted. It seemed he affected the air pressure around you to make the air heavier, like when you dive to the bottom of a pool. Only stronger. He nodded at the blonde's shock. I actually had to pull you out of the dent you left in the ground. Naruto stared at the bowl in shock, an image of Neji's face appearing there, as he recalled the rain landing on something hidden behind him. That bastard, he muttered, clenching his fists and gritting his teeth. The next time I see him I'm gonna get trounced again. Lee cut in, causing the blonde to turn to him angrily. I felt the power coming off that guy. Even I'd have trouble taking him on. Naruto snorted. No offense, senpai, but I still say I can take him. He cracked his knuckles. I saw all his tricks. He won't catch me off guard again. Lee shook his head, sighing as he decided the only way to teach the blonde anything was to pound it into his skull. Naruto-kun, he spoke up, causing the teen to look up. Meet me in the dojo after you finish. He got to his feet, walking out the door and shutting it behind him. You really think it's necessary to use that? Guy called out, Lee turning to find his guardian and mentor leaning against the doorway, his usually jovial features set in a solemn mask as he regarded his ward. I do, Lee admitted, his eyes calm as he bowed his head towards the man. Forgive me, Guy-sensei, but Naruto-kun needs to know what he's up against. He turned on his heel and walked off, and I'm the best one to do so. You're not wrong, Guy admitted, shaking his head with a sigh as the youth walked off. Oh well, at the very least, he'll end up a little wiser. He smiled fondly at his adopted son, and who knows, you may yet receive a training partner. Mato Guy's gutsy dojo of explosive youth. Naruto entered the dojo wearing one of the spare green training gi that Guy-sensei always seemed to have lying around on the off chance some new members wandered in the door and felt like practicing. This brings back memories, he mused, grinning around the dojo as he faced Lee, who stood up from meditating in the middle to face him. Reminds me of the first time we met. You had heard rumors about the dojo and decided to test yourself by taking the sign, Lee recalled, smiling at the memory of how they'd met. And I beat you in less than a minute. No need to remind me, Naruto muttered, recalling his first and most brutal loss ever. I'd never received any proper martial arts training. I thought it was all fancy kicks and screaming, like in the movies. He smirked at the older teen and moved into a standard karate stance. But I ain't the same guy I used to be, senpai. He charged forwards, dodging to the side and striking at Lee's shin. The older teen blocked and ducked low, aiming to sweep the blonde's leg from under him, only for Naruto to leap back. The blonde then charged low, going for a strike to the face, only for Lee to grab him by the front of his gi and flip him over. You've gotten better, Lee applauded, watching as Naruto rolled with the throw and came to his feet. That one always used to lay you flat. I told you I wasn't the same guy I used to be. Naruto shot back, rubbing his nose as he moved into a ready stance, jogging lightly on the balls of his feet as he circled the older teen warily. You still believe I can't take this guy? Yes, Lee replied, his features so confident, so assured, that Naruto actually paused to gape at him. Skilled as you are, that man is even more so. He frowned, clenching his knuckles tightly. Maybe even more than me. Naruto blinked, eyeing the look on the older teen's face, unable to comprehend what he'd just heard. Out of all the guys he'd tussled with, Lee was by far the best, if not the best in their own age group. To this day, Naruto had never managed a definitive win against the older boy, though Lee assured him he was getting better with every tussle. The older boy's prowess was so great he'd once made it all the way to the national championships, and there were rumors he had his eyes set on the Olympic title. For someone like that to admit that there was someone better than him so calmly, so certainly, was enough to give even Naruto room for thought. Naruto-kun, Lee spoke up, startling the blonde out of his thoughts to find the older teen's fist rushing towards him, the blonde leaning to the side sharply to avoid being punched in the nose. What is one of the many things, Guy-sensei, and I have taught you. Watch your enemy, Naruto replied, the blonde leaping up to avoid a low kick, turning it into a spin kick that Lee weaved around. The elder teen grabbing Naruto's gi and executing a perfect throw, Naruto rolling as he came down and getting back to his feet warily. It seemed Lee was in a lecturing mood. Correct, Lee confirmed, moving back into his ready stance as Naruto lunged forwards again, fending off the younger teen's blow with his one hand, performing a leg sweep that quickly turned into a high kick to catch the blonde as he jumped, sending Naruto rolling across the ground once more, the blonde's eyes narrowing in frustration as he got back to his feet. And what did you notice about Hyuga Neji when you fought him? Naruto frowned, his breath coming out hard as he thought back to the fight on the hill, his hackles rising as he recalled the holier-than-thou attitude the older Hyuga had worn like a cloak. He was confident, he recalled, and fast, graceful. The blonde's eyes narrowed further as another detail rose to attention, one that wasn't clear at the time, but was literally staring him in the face as he regarded Lee, and he wasn't even breathing hard as I attacked him. Very good, Lee applauded, actually surprised that Naruto had noticed that last part in the midst of a fight. It just went to prove the blonde was sharper than most people believed him to be. And what is the second thing we taught you? Know your surroundings, Naruto shot back, grateful for the break in the action as he got to his feet, taking a deep breath to steady himself, watching the Lee warily, ready to dodge if the elder teen made a move. Correct, Lee confirmed, nodding his head in approval now. When you were lying on the ground, did you happen to look around you? He sighed as Naruto looked at him in confusion. You weren't the only one affected by his technique, he explained. I checked around, and several plants had withered, as if crushed, and there were several small animals lying around, out cold like yourself. He nodded at the blonde. Even some of his men looked like they had been struggling to breathe. Naruto blinked, recalling the figure hovering behind the Hyuga in the rain, wondering if it had something to do with it. That guy, he muttered, just before the pressure hit me. He took this massive breath, like he was about to yell or dive. He smirked, clenching his knuckles. If I can get him before he does that, I've got him. No, you haven't, Lee cut in, crossing his arms as he eyed the younger teen solemnly. As you are now, you don't stand a chance against Hyuga Neji. He shook his head with a small smile, especially since you can't even best me. Naruto's POV. Naruto blinked, not used to being mocked by Lee of all people. The elder teen was nothing if not humble. Even during their first encounter, he'd gone out of his way to be polite to the crass blonde thug that had marched disrespectfully into his guardian's dojo, not even bothering to remove his shoes. That being said, even if it was Lee doing the talking, trash talk was trash talk, and Naruto's hair-trigger temper wouldn't allow anyone to get away with that. The blonde charging forwards, an increasingly familiar rush passing through his body heralding the arrival of the specter. Naruto grimacing as he tried to keep it from lashing out, not wanting to seriously hurt his senpai, only to blink as something wrapped around his leg, causing him to trip, the specter dissipating as his face hit the floor. He swore, rolling on the ground, hands clamped over his aching nose. All right, who's the wise guy? He demanded, lowering his hands to glare beadily at whatever had tripped him up, only to blink as he spotted what appeared to be a bandage wrapped around his ankle. What the heck? He wondered, following the wrapping back to its source, only to see it disappear up Lee's sleeve. Senpai. But when did? How did you do that? You still haven't figured it out. Lee wondered, quirking a brow even as the rustling of cloth filled the air, Naruto's eyes widening as several more rolls of cloth bandages rose up behind the elder teen like serpents. Try touching the wrapping with your hand. Naruto did so, his eyes widening in shock as he espied his fingers through the fabric, as if it wasn't truly there. Not only that, now that he got a closer look of the thing, it was clear the wrapping weren't casting any discernible shadow despite being solid enough to bind his leg. This is, he realized, only to grunt as several more bandages wrapped around his body, the blonde looking up at Lee in shock as the elder teen tugged on the bandages, tightening his grip. Lee senpai. You too. Indeed, Naruto-kun. The older teen confirmed, his features calm as he stood over the blonde, tightening his grip on the bandages once more. You are not the only one to be graced with a protective spirit. Damn it. Naruto grimaced at the calm, almost emotionless expression in Lee's eyes as the bandages snaked their way up his body. He's never used this against me before, muttered, wincing as the bandages bound his arms to his sides, struggling tightly as they continued to press. And has he always been this strong? Muda, the blonde spirit yelled, erupting from behind its master, ripping the bandages binding Naruto to as the blonde's arms snapped outwards, his fists clenched as he charged towards his senpai. Those bandages may have caught me off guard once, he admitted, weaving under another volley with the ease of years of dodging blows on the streets, but now that I know they're coming, they aren't strong enough to keep me down. He lunged forwards, the specter rearing back as they got within 2 meters of the older teen, ready to deliver a knockout blow. Sorry about this, senpai, Naruto muttered as he charged Lee's flank. But I can't hold back if I'm gonna beat that guy. Pretty impressive, Lee commented, not turning to face the threat, even as the spirit's fist neared his cheek, a fist flying out of nowhere to deflect the spirit's blow, another ramming into its face, Naruto's head snapping back as he was sent sprawling onto his back, his own nose bleeding from the impact. But you're far too slow. What the hell? The blonde sputtered, reaching up to cover his bleeding nose, stunned by the sight of his own blood, his eyes widening as he gaped up at Lee. Or rather, the disembodied arms hovering around the elder teen, the bandages made arms. Indeed, Lee confirmed, turning to face his kohai as the bandages beginning to converge behind him, seemingly wrapping around an invisible body. As you pointed out, on their own, my bandages are quick and good for restraining weaker opponents, but they lack in offensive strength and can be easily broken if the target is strong enough. The bandages took the form of a medium-built figure with long arms and legs. However, if I gather them together, I can sacrifice range for offensive power. Behind the bowl-haired teen, a mummy-like figure with a bowl-shaped helmet and green glass for eyes hovered behind the teen, arm extended and palm facing upwards as it eyed the blonde. That is the power of my spirit, Lee finished, moving into his trademark ready stance that his spirit mimicked Kung Fu generation. Naruto grimaced, torn between awe at the sight of the other spirit and annoyance at how Lee had kept it hidden all this time, before smirking, cracking his neck joints as he got to his feet. You really are full of surprises, aren't you, Lee-senpai? He praised, eyeing the older teen warily even as his own spirit reappeared behind him, eyeing Lee's mummy with a vindictive expression. Clearly not liking the sucker punch from earlier. Never thought you of all people could pull a fast one on me. He smirked as the spirit behind him seemed to thrum with anticipation. But you see, this guy behind me. He popped his knuckle joints, flexing his fingers, before launching forwards. He's a lot more violent than I am. Lee watched calmly as the spirit swung its fists, raising an eyebrow impressively, before narrowing his eyes and sending his own into the fray. Muta. Ata-ta-ta-ta-ta. Both teens grit their teeth as their spirits duked it out, the sound of crashing fists echoing in the air as a breeze picked up between them. The right sleeve of Lee's gi tore. Naruto's cheek suddenly sprouted a cut. Lee grimaced as a grazing blow caused his shoulder to sting, and Naruto's jaw clenched as his collarbone was struck by some invisible force. Muta Hawacha. The two spirits' fists rammed into each other one last time, both teens to flinching and taking a step back as they felt their own hands reverberate from the blow, before Lee's spirit's left fist came up in a swift uppercut, stunning Naruto's and sending the teen staggering back to fall on his ass, blood seeping out of his mouth. In terms of strength, both of us seem evenly matched, Lee commented, standing over the blonde as his spirit hovered beside him in a ready stance. The difference, Naruto-kun, lies in three factors. He held up a finger, the spirit mimicking his stance. First is speed. I'm faster than you, so I can land more punches when we're in close range. He held up a second, spirit mimicking him again. Secondly is experience. He eyed the stunned blonde carefully. I have known about this spirit since my birth. It has always been with me. He held up a third finger, smiling down at his kohai as he did so. And finally, how can someone use power, no matter how great, if they don't even know what it is? Naruto sat there, rubbing his jaw as he felt for any missing teeth. Sure enough, one came loose during the blow, and he spat it onto his palm, before staring up at Lee in shock. Senpai, he muttered, eyeing the spirit behind Lee carefully. What the hell are these things? A spirit, Guy called out, Naruto looking to the right to spot the man standing there with his arms crossed, apparently having been there for some time, but at the same time it is hardly a foreign one. It is, in actuality, a powerful image created from your own life force. He smiled at the blonde encouragingly, and because it stands by your side, we call this spirit the stand. A stand? Naruto repeated, blinking as Lee's spirit extended a hand, pulling the blonde to his feet and returning to its master's side. I don't understand. If you've known about these things for so long, how come I only learned of mine now? I'm not certain, Guy admitted, shaking his head with a frown. However, I believe that just as people can be born with stands, there are others who have the potential sleeping deep within their bodies. He raised a finger. It is a fact, however, that stand users are attracted to one another. So maybe it was fate that led you and Lee to meet. Naruto fought down the urge to retch at the idea of something as redundant as fate having anything to do with him. The blonde never put much faith in such things as fortune tellers or psychics, personally believing that it was a scam, and that anyone with a brain would go out and make their own destiny rather than have it spoon-fed to them for a price. Do you have one, Guy-sensei? He asked, hoping to change the subject. Alas, no, Guy replied, shaking his head with a look of disappointment that he covered up quickly. However, I am able to see stands because I have trained in ways that raise one's spiritual capacity. He sweat dropped as Naruto stared at him with a deadpan expression, before coughing into his fist. Perhaps a demonstration is in order. A rundown bar in East Konoha. Mizuki howled as he lay on the cot in the prison cell at the Konoha Central Police Station, clutching his injured hand to his chest, his face a mass of bandages, from which you could still spot the odd cut or bruise if you looked close enough. Damn it, the former instructor cursed, his good hand coming up to grip his face as a surge of pain rushed through him. The girls used to flock to me because of my looks. They'd snuggle up to me like life-size Dako-chans. His pupils narrowed to slits as he recalled the cause of his distress until that brat ruined everything. From the moment Uzumaki Naruto had enrolled at East Konoha Gakuen, he'd been nothing but trouble for Mizuki. The blonde hellion respected very few people, Iruka and Gai-sensei to name but a few, and even then had problems with authority, refusing to follow an order that he disagreed with, or outright ignoring anyone's attempts to reform him. Initially, Mizuki had tried to get the thug under his control. After all, having the punk known to the gangs as the Hurricane King at his beck and call would be an asset. However, as it soon proved impossible to bring the blonde hellion to heel, he'd instead set about trying to get him removed, lest he ruin the man's operations. But now it had all fallen apart, for with the blonde's revelation of Mizuki's true colors, all the man's plotting and scheming had been dragged into the light. Even without the attempted murder rap he was slammed with the amount of evidence they'd accumulated from his blackmail and extortion victims, it was highly unlikely Mizuki would ever see the light of day outside of prison bars again. Keep it down in there, one of the guards on duty snapped, rapping his nightstick against the bars of the cell irritably. Don't make me come in there, Mizuki, he warned, patting his stun gun for emphasis. Trust me, after what you put those kids through, I won't hesitate to crank the voltage up. Whatever you say, officer, Mizuki muttered between clenched teeth, glaring at the man as he walked off, doubling over on his cot as he gripped his ruined hand, muttering curses and swearing vengeance on him, the school, the town, and most of all on that bastard Naruto the moment he got a chance. What a foul mouth you've got, a voice noted from outside the bars, Mizuki freezing, turning to look at the door, his eyes narrowing as he espied a shadowy figure standing before the bars, his features hidden, though Mizuki could easily make out the North Konoha Gakuen boy's uniform he was wearing. It wasn't that hard considering how white it was, the buttons done all the way up. What do you want? Mizuki muttered, rising into a sitting position, his injured hand resting in its sling as he glared at the figure, trying to make out who he was or at least get a better look at his face, which proved impossible, given the shadows. The only features he could truly identify was the kid's hair, which reminded the former educator of a cockatoo for some reason. That or a duck's arse. If you're supposed to be my solicitor, then I want my money back. Charming, the teen muttered, though a flash of annoyance crossed his eyes, evident by the tick under his right eye. I overheard your desire for revenge. Care for a little help. Mizuki eyed the teen, unsure if this was a trap. The kid reminded him of someone dangerous, especially with those dark, brooding eyes. Every bone in the man's body seemed to be giving out a warning klaxon, but the alcohol in his system, coupled with his hatred for virtually everything at that moment, simply told them to bugger off. What do ya have in mind? Konoha Park. Naruto waved at a passing elderly couple as he followed Lee and Guy through the park. He was wearing his regular school uniform attire, seeing as he felt that if an image worked, why change it? So we come here to meditate or do tai chi or something? He asked, sniffing in disdain as Lee looked at him. You don't really believe in that enlightenment stuff, do you? I do actually, Guy admitted, ignoring the sweat drop his confirmation earned from the blonde, and those are two good methods to obtaining it. He walked over to one of the more deserted areas, where a large pool lay, the water rippling as a result of an artificial waterfall set up at the opposite end near a small outcrop. Putting that aside, however, this is the best way to show you what I mean. He turned to face the two, nodding to Lee, who walked off to the side to keep a lookout for any intruders. Naruto noticing several snake-like bandages darting off around the trees, creating a net which would alert the elder teen to someone's presence. So what's the big deal? The blonde muttered, wincing as his collarbone ached, wondering if Lee had cracked it. Why you drag me out here, Erg? The reason for the blonde's distress was apparent. For the moment he'd turned back to face Guy, the bushy-browed gym coach had dashed forwards, pinky finger extended from his fist as he rammed it into and under the teen's ribs, Naruto doubling over as the air was literally forced out of his lungs as they contracted. I've just expelled all the air in your lungs, down to the last centiliter, Guy explained as Naruto sunk to his knees, holding feebly onto the man's arm for support. Do not worry, you'll be able to breathe again in a few seconds, he assured the youth, who looked up at him in confusion. In fact, I dare say you'll find it a lot easier. The hell is he talking about? Naruto wondered, unable to voice his confusion aloud for obvious reasons. The blonde instinctively inhaling as he felt the constriction in his lungs die down, only for his eyes to widen as a surge ran through his body, infinitely more exhilarating than any adrenaline rush. His muscles seemed to swell slightly. His chest expanded out like some sort of accordion, the sharp pain of his collarbone instantly dissipating to nothing. What the hell? He breathed, staring at his arms in amazement, like he'd never seen them before. What the how the? Blinking, the shocked teen raised his arms to his collarbone, finding it healed completely, the other dull aches that had been piling up to complain having died down as well. What is this? He stood up, almost losing his footing at how light he felt. Spying a large rock, about the size of a football, he grabbed it, lifting it one-handed before lobbing it into the middle of the pond, startling a flock of ducks that scattered, quaking in anger. My collarbone, Naruto muttered. I know I heal fast, but this was broken not even a minute ago. He stared out where the ripples from the stone were still spreading out. And that stone, it shouldn't have been that light, but I threw it one-handed, and that far. He turned to Guy, who had a look on his face that seemed oddly reminiscent of a parent watching as a child took its first step. What is this? Naruto asked, eyes wide in disbelief. Guy-sensei, what the hell did you just do? Your youthful enthusiasm is refreshing, Guy praised, beaming at the blonde as he ignored the language. But don't rush me, all will be explained in due time. And with that, he turned towards the pond, walking over to it and, to Naruto's absolute shock, onto the water, striding across it with an air of normalcy, as he weren't openly giving the laws of physics the finger. What's the matter, Naruto-kun? He called out as the blonde's jaw hit the floor. Is there something the matter? Something the matter? Naruto yelled. How's about the fact you're stealing Jesus act? Guy chuckled, watching as the blonde ranted on about God suing your ass for copyright infringement, before holding up a hand to silence him. As you know, the basis of most martial arts is the breath, he explained. Using it, you can run for miles without tiring, focus your power to double your strength or strengthen your defenses. He held out a palm, crossing it across his chest, facing the water. This, however, he moved his arm out to his side, is a completely different level of mastering one's breath. Naruto's eyes widened as ripples spread out in an irregular pattern from Guy's feet, catching the rays of the sun and forming shining golden arches as they stretched away from him. Those ripples, Naruto marveled, seeing the regularity of the ripples as they crisscrossed seamlessly. Even I can tell that isn't natural. With a single finger to your diaphragm, Guy called out, I have adjusted your breathing patterns to replicate that of Lee and myself. The older man crossed his arms elegantly, seeming to leave after images in their wake as they came to rest at his sides. Remember this, Naruto, he called out, your breath and blood are connected. Blood carries oxygen from the lungs, which then travels to the cells that make up your entire body. He spread his arms wide, causing the ripples to shine again, like the ripples in the water. Breathing causes ripples to spread throughout your body. Moving into a stance, Guy eyed a rock where a toad had apparently come out to sun itself, clenching a fist and raising it over his head. Breathing creates energy, he preached. The same energy you are about to see is the one that healed you broken collarbone. Naruto's eyes widened as he realized what Guy was going to do, and attempted to leap into the water, only for one of Lee's bandages to grab his arm, holding him back. Watch, the older teen ordered, not taking his eyes off his sensei and surrogate father as Naruto turned to yell at him. Watch and learn, Naruto-kun, sensei knows what he's doing. Bruo, Guy roared, punching down, trapping the frog between his fist and the mercilessly hard rock. However, instead of causing little amphibian parts to go flying, the rock beneath the frog shattered, crumbling to dust, the frog merely plopping into the water and swimming away. This is the power of breathing, Guy explained, turning to face the shore, walking towards the stunned Naruto. The power of Sendu, the power of Hamon. Sendu Hamon, Naruto repeated, gazing out at the water in shock as Lee's bandages released him, vanishing back into the ether as the older teen recalled his stand. Amazing. From what Lee-kun was able to decipher, Guy commented, hopping back onto solid ground as he spoke. Everything within a 5-meter radius of your long-haired friend collapsed under the sudden change in air pressure. He held up a finger. Prior to that, he took an intensely long breath. This leads me to believe that he is at the very least a practitioner of the art of Hamon as well, if not a master. You mean he's as strong as you? Naruto gaped, staring at the man in shock, not liking the idea of going up against someone that could literally pull a kung fu Jesus on him, only to relax as Guy waved a hand dismissively. I doubt that very much, the man assured the blonde, his tone so confident that Naruto didn't even question it. Though at the very least, he's a match for Lee-kun, who has been training in the art since I adopted him at the age of 5. Naruto flinched, looking down at the ground as the background faded away. Damn it, he swore. That bastard, he wasn't just holding back, he wasn't even trying to fight me. He clenched his knuckles, and I can't even take down Lee Senpai on a good day, even without him using Sendu or his stand. Gritting his teeth, the blonde spun round, earning a startled cry from Guy as he lashed out, slamming his fist into a tree, tearing the skin on his knuckles. Stop that at once, Naruto, Guy ordered, grabbing the teen's arm to keep him from further damaging himself. Stop this. Just because you lost one fight you act like a child. Where's the honor in that? Naruto grimaced, his free hand freezing against the trunk of the tree, though Guy maintained his grip on the other wrist just in case, sighing fondly as he smiled down at the blonde he'd come to regard as a second student. When you first challenged Lee, you bragged and pranced about like a common brawler, he reminded the teen. But when you lost, rather than lose your temper, you vowed to keep coming back till you'd beaten Lee at his own game. He smiled down at the blonde, who was breathing heavy, though the anger seemed to be leaving his frame that was 5 years ago. Where'd all that youthful determination go? Naruto froze for a second, then relaxed, shoulders sagging as he exhaled. Guy released his arm and he turned round, leaning on the tree with a wry smirk. Sorry for making a scene, sensei. The teen apologized, rubbing his blonde locks out of his face. It's just that a lot of weird shit's been happening, and it was beginning to mess with my head. I understand, Guy assured him. After all, if it were anyone else who'd gone through the week the blonde had just had, they'd probably need to be institutionalized. Never mind, dead, and I am willing to train you in this art, but only on the condition that you don't learn it for the sole sake of getting strong enough to get revenge. That again, Naruto snorted, shaking his head as he regarded Lee's guardian with a wry smirk. Sensei, I've heard you say that a dozen times already, and you know me better than that. He held up a fist whilst grabbing a branch of the tree, striking a pose as the wind ruffled his hair. The only reason I fight, Naruto preached, is to make sure I don't lose any more precious people. Guy blinked, stunned silent by the teen's words, before smiling warmly at the blonde, Lee mimicking his sensei's face as he came up behind him, only to blink in amazement and grab the man's shoulder. Guy-sensei, the older teen yelled, pointing at the branch Naruto was holding, Guy's eyes widening as he realized what had startled his protege. The branch, which had been barren and dry, suddenly bloomed cherry blossoms, the entire branch erupting in out-of-season blossoms whilst the rest of the tree remained untouched. Amazing, Lee marveled, his eyes wide with disbelief. Even though it is only a branch, the fact that it reacted in such a way to Naruto-kun's touch. Unbelievable. He stared on as Naruto gazed at them in confusion, unaware of the miracle happening just above him. The energy that healed his bones still remains, channeled through his body and into the tree. The boy's body has already adapted to the ripple. Guy marveled, shaking his head in wonder at how quickly Naruto seemed to pick up this new ability. He's a natural, a veritable conduit for the ripple. Sensei, senpai, Naruto called out, snapping the two out of their trance, the blonde looking more than a little freaked out by this point. You guys okay in there? Was it something I said? Nothing at all, Naruto-kun, Guy assured the teen, smiling at the youth as he raised a hand to waylay his fears. I was merely touched by your youthful enthusiasm, he proclaimed, nodding to Lee before patting the younger teen on the back. Why don't you two head on over to Ikaraku's and order lunch? It's on me. Yahoo! Naruto yelled, his earlier discomfort all but forgotten as he punched the air, his eyes lighting up with glee as he turned on his heel and raced off for the park entrance, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Come on, senpai. I'll race ya. That isn't fair, Naruto-kun, Lee chastised, dashing off in hot pursuit, easily catching up to his younger rival as they made for the ramen stand. You have a head start. Guy chuckled, listening to the sounds of their footsteps die down before turning his attention to the blossoming branch again. Normally such an action would be unthinkable, he noted, marveling at the out-of-season blossoms. For Naruto to instinctively channel the ripple in such a manner with no prior training, what amazing potential he must possess. He gazed heavenwards, eyes searching the clouds in wonderment. That boy, he muttered, truly, he is an interesting person. He chuckled, recalling how Lee would advise Naruto on how to properly kick in a fight, even whilst the blonde swore at him to stand his ground. But then again, Lee-kun figured that out long before I did. Hyuga manner. I see. Hyuga Hayashi commented, not looking up from a document he was signing even as Neji finished his report regarding the events surrounding his eldest daughter's latest escapade. And where is Hinata now? In her room, Neji replied. Since returning home she hasn't set one foot outside the door, not even to eat meals. Hayashi sighed, finished applying his signature to the document before placing it in an envelope, shutting it with the family stamp. He gestured to the butler, who nodded and took the letter, along with several others, out of the room, leaving the two alone. And this boy, Hayashi spoke up, this Uzumaki Naruto, what do you think of him, Neji? Neji blinked, clearly not expecting such a question from his uncle, before shrugging it off as simple curiosity. After all, twice now Hinata-sama's paths had crossed with the Yankees, and both times had led to Hayashi having to mobilize his personal bodyguards to cover everything up. He's just a typical East Side thug, Neji opined, his hands clasped behind his back as he looked his uncle in the eyes. A thug with good intentions, I'll concede, given the reports we've garnered from the general public. But a thug nonetheless. He paused for a moment, wondering if he should elaborate further, before deciding it may be prudent to let the Hyuga head know just what they were dealing with also. It should be noted that as a result of Hinata-sama's actions at the hospital, he has awakened his stand. I see, Hayashi muttered, his brows furrowing at the revelation, though Neji couldn't tell if the man was displeased or merely intrigued, as stand users were rare enough in and of themselves, even amongst those who'd experienced Hinata-sama's talents. I suppose we'll need to keep a closer eye on him from now on. He quirked a brow at Neji's scoff. I take it you don't consider him worth watching. He's hardly a threat, even with a stand. The younger Hyuga opined, his tone dismissive even as recalled that night in the limo. I'll admit he's pretty impressive when it comes to brawling, but other than that, and his penchant for getting into trouble, he doesn't strike me as being worth our attention. Even though he scarred you chest? Hayashi asked, surprising his nephew with his knowledge. Make no mistake, Neji, that while they may be under your authority, Hinata's bodyguards are under my employ. He reminded the teen, you would do well to remember that in future. I will keep that in mind, Hayashi-sama. Neji muttered, his features neutral, though internally he was seething at the idea that his subordinates would go behind his back. Even if it was on Hayashi's orders. May I take my leave? I have an early class tomorrow. Hayashi nodded, dismissing the boy and turning his head to the window of his study, eyeing the sky as the sun set behind the forest range. Uzumaki Naruto, he muttered, feeling a light breeze lift his hair slightly at the thought. Can it possibly be a coincidence? Elsewhere, Hyuga Mansion. It's all my fault. Hinata sobbed, the heiress sitting on her bed, her knees drawn up to her chest and her head bowed as she rocked back and forth. If it weren't for me, Naruto-kun and Neji-Nisan wouldn't have had to fight, wouldn't have gotten hurt again. She flinched as the memory of her elder cousin's blood spraying across the car, almost staining her uniform but falling short at her shoes. So shocked was she by the sudden injury, so shaken from the earlier fight between her cousin and Naruto, that she'd collapsed into sobs, barely able to hear the comforting words of the awkward guard she was hiding her face from. Why is it always me? She wondered sadly, holding herself tighter, tears leaking from her eyes as she tried to make sense of everything. Why do people always get hurt because of me? One-chan, a voice called out, Hinata looking up, blinking the tears out of her eyes as she spied the small, worried face of Hanabi, her little sister looking at her from across the bed. You're crying. The youngest Hyuga noted, eyeing her elder sister in concern. Are you okay? Hinata shivered, the memory of the blood and Naruto's lifeless eyes flashing before her own. I'll be fine, she lied, trying to reassure her younger sibling. It's just been a long day. Hanabi eyed the girl carefully, before climbing onto the bed and embracing her sister, earning a warm smile from Hinata. You don't have to lie to me, she assured her, startling the older girl yet again with her unusual maturity. I don't like it when you're sad. Hinata smiled and returned the hug, the two remaining like that for some time before getting under the covers, Hanabi stating she wanted to sleep there, the elder Hyuga smiling as she felt her sibling hug her in her sleep, slowly falling asleep herself. I'll protect you, Ni-chan, Hanabi promised. I hate it when you cry, I'll always be there to help you. Shikamaru sighed as he walked down the steps of Naruto's apartment block, cursing the blonde horror and his love of high places. I mean, come on. He whined. Why the hell would anyone purposely choose an apartment on the 6th floor when there were plenty below? No luck, Chaoji, he called out, shaking his head at the larger teen. Looks like we're flying solo again. Chaoji nodded, munching away at his barbecue chips contentedly as he fell into step alongside his friend. They were currently into the first week of their spring break, and right now the trio would be cruising the arcades, lazing around or, if Naruto won the vote, beating the crap out of any Yakuza grunts that had the misfortune to cross their paths before pigging out on ramen. And of course, who gets stuck thinking up reasons to explain to our folks why our clothes are ripped up? Shikamaru muttered, sighing in resignation. Ah, well, may as well enjoy the day. Any plans, Shikamaru? Chaoji asked, tossing the packet into a trash bin and pulling and looking round for something else to nibble. The Nara merely snorted and put his hand behind his head. We haven't been up at the old tree recently, he commented. What say we go cloud gazing? The weather looks good. Chaoji shrugged and followed the teen, the two completely unaware they had picked up a tale some streets back. Hinata sat in her room, brushing out Hanabi's hair gently, the two sisters enjoying some private time now that the school had let out. Hanabi smiled at her sister, earning a smile in return from Hinata as she noticed the reflection. "You're growing up quickly, Hanabi," the older girl commented, a sad smile on her face. Aka-san would have been proud. Hanabi looked down. Their mother had passed away about a year after giving birth to the younger girl, meaning she had no memories of her. Hinata had told her all about their mother since their father had been too caught up with work. She had told her of her mother's love of books and lilacs, how lavender had been her favorite scent in color, but most of all, she recalled her mother's gentle, loving hands and features. Shaking her head to clear it of such depressing thoughts, Hinata reached for the comb to finish the job, only for a rush to run up her body as she made contact with the handle. A lazy-faced teen is slumped against a wall, breathing heavily as he holds a bloodstained hand to his bleeding shoulder. He stared in horror at what the barrel of the gun pointed at his face. A large boy with brown hair is sent sprawling after a massive man hits him in the back. He struggled to get up, only for the man to start stamping on his stomach. A friendly-looking man with a scar across his nose slumps forwards as his back apparently erupts into blood, a massive man-tiger leering behind him. A pair of golden, serpent-like eyes narrowed at her maliciously, a set of fangs rushing forwards at lightning speed. "One chan." Hinata jumped, wincing as her muscles cramped, as was routine for one of her attacks, before looking up into the worried eyes of her sister and attempting to smile weakly. Hanabi merely broke out into relieved sobs and hugged her older sibling tightly. "What is the problem?" a voice called out, heralding the arrival of Hyuga Neji, who was looking annoyed. "Did Hinata-sama have another attack?" he asked, earning a nod from Hanabi. "I'll fetch the doctor, stay with her." Hanabi shivered as the elder teen left the room. She didn't know why, but something about her cousin reminded her of ice. Hinata had once told her that she and Neji had been very close as children, but right now that seemed as likely as the sky being purple. Hinata shivered as she lay on the floor, the memory of those eyes scaring her to her core. "To Sankasen," she whispered, before shutting her eyes and curling into a tighter ball. "Naruto-kun." Naruto closed his eyes, standing in the midst of the water as he faced Lee, the older teen standing an arm's length away from him. The two of them were stripped to the waist, with exception of weighted wristbands and vests. Lee's his usual green and Naruto's a standard black. Guy, standing off to the side yet close enough to see what was going on, nodded once and the two extended their arms until they were parallel with one another. "Our reach is equal," Naruto noticed, eyeing his senpai warily. "Lee-senpai may be faster, but at this range it really shouldn't matter." He frowned, his jaw aching dully as if in contradiction to his thoughts. Guy raised a hand, before dropping it sharply, signaling for the two teens to start. Both Naruto and Lee moved, arms cocking and lunging forwards in a punch at roughly the same moment. At first it looked like a double knockout was at hand, but at the last minute, Lee's arms seemed to extend, granting him an extra foot in range, his fist ramming into Naruto's jaw, sending the blonde sprawling backwards with a yelp. He did it again. The blonde marveled, raising himself from the water and wiping his jaw, on top of being slightly faster. His arms suddenly extended. "How do you keep doing that?" he asked, accepting the hand Lee offered to lift him up, whilst Guy stepped forwards. "You still aren't using the breathing patterns I've taught you," the older man chastised, a stern look on his face as he looked down at the blonde. "Remember, the Hammond energy that healed your body is extremely sensitive to emotional distress." He held up a finger. "Anyone can use it instinctively. But in order to access the true power of the ripple, you need to continuously utilize the rhythm." Naruto nodded, slapping his cheeks and getting in front of Lee again. "Warkata Tebeo," he muttered, getting into the stance again. Guy nodded, stepping back as he watched Lee instruct the teen on the all-essential breathing pattern yet again. "He's come quite a long way for a beginner," the man noted, eyeing the blonde carefully. "Not even a week and he's almost got the breathing pattern down." He sighed as Lee once again sent the teen flying, shaking his head as the blonde yelped, spitting out blood as a result of biting his tongue. "He's either a genius or a stubborn bastard," Guy commented, chuckling as Naruto marched back to the older teen and got into position, most likely the latter. Iruka sighed as he looked over the last few exam papers he had to mark, wondering why, out of all the available staff, he had been the unfortunate duty of taking on Mizuki's responsibilities on top of his own. "Bad enough my own class is scraping the barrel," he muttered, but what the hell was Mizuki doing? "Half these kids can't even spell." He moaned and put his head in his hands, deciding to go out for a coffee to relax, before tackling the rest of the damn sheets later. He whimsically dreamt of going off to enjoy the spring break, only to slump as he realized the school would just fax the sheets to him. Locking the door to his apartment behind him, The instructor passed by Naruto's flat, staring sadly at the locked door, the blonde having not come home in several nights. "Get a hold of yourself, man," he muttered, shaking his head and walking past the door hurriedly. "Keep this up and you'll go bald." Several minutes, and a nice refreshing mocha later, and the frazzled teacher's nerves were slowly on the mend. He nodded cheerfully at the waitress as she brought him a refill, before picking up the paper to see what he'd missed in the sports section. A flash of silver caught his attention, causing him to look up in surprise as Mizuki walked past the window, fully heeled and dressed in a jacket and jeans. What the heck? Haruka wondered, recalling the last time he'd seen the former instructor's face. It had resembled raw hamburger meat, only less appetizing. How'd he heal so fast? Placing money for his drink on the table, the man got to his feet and rushed out to tail his former colleague, looking for a chance to find out how he was. Now most people, upon discovering their workmates were despicable bastards, would wash their hands of them altogether. But Haruka was the sort that wouldn't let things alone until he'd put all the pieces together. He followed Mizuki to a warehouse, wondering if he'd gotten a job as a laborer, only for his eyes to widen at the sight of a black limo with Yakuza guards parked next to it. What on earth? The scarred instructor breathed, sneaking to the side and climbing up on some crates to crawl through a window, giving him a good view of the proceedings. "Good day, gentlemen," Mizuki greeted, hands raised defensively as several firearms were pointed in his general direction. "Please, I come in peace." "You're about to leave in pieces," a thug with an Osaka dialect yelled, only to blink as the silver-haired figure disappeared. "Now really, is that any way to treat the bearer of opportunity?" Mizuki commented, sitting atop some crates off to the side, startling the thugs. "I understand you guys have been having some problems setting up shop." The leader of the gang held up a hand, ordering his men to stand down as he eyed the silver-haired man warily. "What is it you are proposing?" he asked, earning a snort from Mizuki. "How would you guys like to be rid of the greatest pain in your collective asses since Prohibition?" The former instructor asked. "I am, of course, referring to the one you call the Hurricane King." The thugs began muttering restlessly at the man's words, earning a smirk from Mizuki as the leader held up a hand for silence. "What do you propose?" the older man asked, looking skeptical. "We've tried many times to trap him, but he always gets away." "That's because he doesn't work alone," Mizuki replied, holding up 2 photos. "Get rid of these 2, and you effectively sever his arms and legs." He tossed the photos to the leader, who raised an eyebrow at the pictures of Choji and Shikamaru. "I trust you have information on these 2. the boss asked, to which Mizuki held up a floppy disk. "And what will you be asking in exchange?" "Simple," Mizuki replied, "and relax. It isn't money, though that would be appreciated." He reached up, pushing a lock of hair out his face as he grinned insanely. "I want the damn brat's head." The Yakuza shivered at the insane glint in the former instructor's eyes, some instinctively tightening their hold on their weapons. Before the leader nodded. "Agreed," he stated calmly, "but I must ask, how do you intend to draw the Hurricane King into this trap?" "Oh, don't worry," Mizuki assured the man, chuckling darkly. "Anyone can set a trap." He smirked up at the ceiling, "provided they have the right bait." Quick as a wink, the silver-haired former instructor drew out a throwing knife from his belt and hurled it at a crate, causing a sharp cry to sound out as a figure fell to the floor, landing on the table with a harsh crash. "My Haruka," Mizuki commented, as the Yakuza gathered round the injured man like sharks. "You really shouldn't be so nosy. Curiosity killed the cat and all that." Shikamaru sighed as he listened to his mother rant on, staring at the books she'd piled on his desk in mild disinterest. The woman was determined that he go over the relevant chapters before the day was out, even if she had to glue him to the chair. "And don't bother trying to call Choji," Mrs. Nara warned him. "I already called his mother and she's got him doing chores." She went to the door and nodded. "You father and I are going out, and I'll expect you to have finished by the time we come back." Shikamaru moaned as the door shut with the finality of a jail cell, only to look over the books and sigh. "I've memorized all these already," he muttered. "I'll just laze about until she comes back." Sighing, he waited until he heard the car pull away, before getting up and reaching for the computerized Go board on his desk, only for the window to shatter and the board to erupt into shrapnel and sparks. "Shit," the Nara swore, rolling to the side as another shot almost clipped his ear, huddling behind the bed as he finally noticed the little red bead that was snaking down the wall. "What the fuck is going on?" he yelped, panting heavily as he tried to think of a way out. "Who the fuck is shooting at me?" He took a breath and calmed himself, thinking carefully as he recalled what he knew about rifles and the like, whilst taking in the layout of his room. "Okay, he's fired at least 3 times in my general direction, all of which were pretty damn close." He frowned, eyeing what remained of his mirror carefully. "That means he's on the roof of the building across from us. That gives him the perfect vantage point." He eyed the clock on the wall warily. But if I time this right. He leapt to his feet, charging for the door just as a bullet shot towards him. Across the street, a burst of steam erupted from a vent, scalding the sniper, who screamed, firing off a shot in desperation. Shikamaru slammed the door open and made to dash through it, only for the stray bullet to clip his shoulder, the impact sending him sprawling to the floor outside his room. The teen swore, rolling out of the way as pain seared up his body. Shit. Og. He grimaced as he crawled to the stairs, pulling himself to his feet as he heard the front door bust open. Fuck, more of them. Shoulda guessed, he winced, before eyeing the laundry chute in the wall, grimacing as the footsteps charged up the stairs. When the Yakuza reached the steps, it was to find the hallway deserted, save for the blood that lead out of the room and towards a wall, where the laundry chute lay open. He's headed for the basement, one yelled, causing the others to whirl round and march down the steps like a herd of elephants. Inside the chute, Shikamaru let out a sigh of relief as he used his legs to keep from falling down. Thank God for rent-a-thugs, he muttered. But what now? I can't stay like this forever. He eyed the chute warily, wondering if he could get up to the attic from here, before grunting and beginning the long, gruesome climb. Chouji thanked the girl behind the counter as he counted his change, nodding appreciatively as he picked up the steaming bags of food. His parents had decided to order out for a change, and so had sent him to a nearby stand called Kyobaozai to pick it up, having heard good things about the place. The girl behind the counter smiled warmly and bowed, reminding the large teen vaguely of a koala as she turned to assist another customer. Wonder if I should try asking her out. The teen wondered shyly, before looking up as he heard the sound of a car coming towards him. A woman screamed, causing him to spin round to spot the black car as it barreled towards him. Tossing the bags of food aside, the large teen barely managed to jump in time, landing on the bonnet and ramming into the windshield, rather than being smashed against the side of the renovated tramcar. The other customers started screaming, the owner trying to calm them down as two large figures climbed out of the car. One grabbed Chouji by the collar and dragged him off the hood, punching him in the chest, causing him to gag. Damn it, the man cursed. Couldn't go down easy, could ya? Had to make things difficult. He kicked the large teen in the ribs, his partner pulling out a pair of brass knuckles as he came round the side of the car. He's up there, the second thug called out, leave some for me, damn it. As the first thug pulled back his foot, Chouji grabbed it, rising to his feet and pushing the man over, wincing as his ribs protested. Everything's blurry, he thought shakily. Probably gonna black out in a minute. He noted the thugs coming towards him as if through a haze and shook his head. Gotta get out of here. He's macking a break for it. The first yelled, as Chouji limped off as fast as he could, his body trembling from the collision. Where you going, brat? We're just getting started. Chouji panted as he leaned against the side of the tramcar, desperately trying to remain conscious, before a pair of hands pulled him into the doorway, slamming it shut and bolting it. Who? He began, only to be silenced as the girl from before held a hand to his mouth, hiding under the tabletop as the thugs marched around outside. Where'd he go? One yelled. Did he go down that manhole? Did after him. Chouji blinked as the footsteps receded, looking at the girl as she sighed in relief. She informed the teen that she'd opened one of the manholes to confuse the thugs, and that the two of them should escape before they returned, somehow without actually opening her mouth. Pretty clever, a voice called out, but hardly original. The lead thug kicked the door open, earning a small scream from the girl as he forced his way into the tram. People like you really piss me off, you know, he growled, eyeing the girl. Coulda lived if you just minded your own business, why butt in? The girl grabbed a kitchen knife and held it in front of her, only to be backhanded against the counter. Get out of the damn way, the thug muttered. I'll deal with you, Chen. To the man's shock, Chouji, who he had deemed unconscious, had launched himself at the thug, a pan full of hot grease in his hand, which he flung at the man's face. The thug screamed as the smell of roasting flesh filled the air, just as Chouji tackled him, sending them crashing out the door onto the pavement. D-damn you to hell, the thug screamed, kicking out and catching Chouji in the stomach, getting to his feet and stamping on him repeatedly. I'll kill you, you damn bastard. Shikamaru grunted as he landed on the attic floor, gripping his aching shoulder as he crawled behind some boxes of winter clothing. Damn, he cursed. Now I think about it, getting trapped up here was probably one of the worst ideas ever. He eyed the dimly lit room tiredly, huddling closer to the wall as if hoping to escape notice. Damn it, how'd they find out where I live? I'm gonna check upstairs. A voice called out, causing the teen to moan as he realized they were smarter than they looked. Relax, it's just one brat. And besides, you saw the blood, he ain't going nowhere. Shikamaru grit his teeth as the footsteps approached up the steps, pressing his back against the wall as he thought desperately for a way out of this mess. A chuckle brought his attention to the man at the stairway, cursing as he noticed the man's trail of sight. "Should have been more careful, brat," the man mocked, as he followed the drops of blood on the floor left a mess behind. "Didn't your parents teach you anything?" He leered at the teen as he rounded the corner, grinning as he pulled out his gun and pointed it at the teen's forehead. "Nothing personal, brat," the thug stated mockingly. "Just business. You've been hanging out with the wrong guy." He cocked the trigger and smirked. "But don't worry, he'll be joining us soon enough." Chaoji coughed out blood as the man's size 15 shoe came crashing down onto his abused stomach. Bile rose into the teen's mouth as his stomach tried to force out its contents. "You damn brats have been a pain in our sides for far too long," the thug yelled, stamping on the teen's chest, driving his heel into his sternum. "All that damn manpower wasted, just so you can act like heroes." He kicked him in the side, sneering as he cried out in pain. "Damn brat, there ain't no heroes. The strong feed on the weak die." He cackled as he stood on Chaoji's head, grinding it into the dirt. "You hear me, you fat piece of shit." Chaoji flinched, before glaring up at the man in anger, his teeth grit and a vein on his forehead. "Team," he growled, pushing himself up off the ground. "The fuck did you just say?" "Shut your face," the thug yelled, stamping on the back of the teen's head, driving him face first into the ground. "Oh, still struggling?" he wondered, pushing harder on the teen's neck. "Go ahead, you'll just snap your own neck." "Chai," Chaoji grit out, his teeth clenched tightly as he tried to raise his head off the ground. The massive teen slowly managed to raise himself to his hands, arms trembling under the weight of the thug. "Bibakana," the thug thought as he pushed harder. "I weigh almost 200 pounds. How the hell could a brat like this?" "Huo," Chaoji roared, rising to his feet as he tossed off the offending foot, spinning his fist around like a small meteorite. "Who you callin' fat, you bastard?" Shikamaru stared dully at the barrel of the bullet, laughing to himself as he realized how hopeless it all was. "Man, all I wanted was to live an unremarkable life, marry a plain, quiet woman, have 2 kids, then retire once my kids were old enough." The teen muttered sullenly, "Was that asking too much?" "Mendokus, any last requests?" the thug asked, grinning mockingly down at the injured teen. Shikamaru glared up at him, a hint of fear shuddering down his spine, before smirking with uncharacteristic bravado and giving the man the finger. "Yeah," the teen replied calmly, a familiar vulpine smirk crossing his features for a brief moment. "Make sure you don't miss, cause if you do, I'm taking you down." "Don't kid yourself, brat," the thug scoffed. At this range a blind chimpanzee couldn't miss. He pointed the barrel dead between the teen's eyes and pulled the trigger. Shine. Just as the man's finger moved, he stumbled backwards as his foot apparently sank into the floor, causing him to lose his balance, and the bullet to ricochet off a pipe, slamming into the skull of the man who came up to see what was taking so long. "What the hell?" the gunman yelped, trying to get to his feet, only to stare in horror that he was slowly being pulled into a shadow. He screamed, firing at the shadow to no avail. He continued to fire until the clip was empty, even as he was pulled in up to the neck. He scrabbled for some sort of handhold, only to leave trails in the wood as he disappeared under the darkness, his screams dying out as soon as it closed over him. Shikamaru stared at the shadow in shock, just as a large, shadowy form materialized behind him. It was tall, the head shaped like some sort of beak, 2 glowing red eyes glowing as the belt around its waist bore his trademark no entry sign on the buckle, 2 more adorning the shoulders. "Mendokus," the lazy teen muttered shakily. "Damn Naruto, why does all this freaky shit happen around you?" Chaoji roared as he rammed his fist into the man's jaw, sending him sprawling backwards. The man landed hard, pulling out a gun and pointing it at the large teen, causing him to duck behind a stone bench. "Not so damn tough now, are ya?" the man called out shakily, his face rising up in pus-filled welts from the scalding grease. "You little shit, I'm gonna enjoy killing you." Chaoji ducked as a bullet clipped the edge of the bench, cursing as he realized that he couldn't make it to the guy until he either ran out of ammo or was distracted. As luck would have it, a distraction was provided, just not in the way Chaoji expected. The girl from the dinner stumbled out, a cleaver in hand as she looked around warily, only to be grabbed from behind, a gun at her head. "See this," the thug yelled. "I got a hostage. Get out here where I can see you." Chaoji swore and got to his feet, his heart beating a mile a minute as he gripped the lamppost in anger. Unnoticed by the teen, a massive handprint formed, as some invisible hand gripped the post hard enough to buckle it. "Let her go," he ordered, stepping forwards in annoyance. "I'm the one you're after, she's got nothing to do with this." "That's right," the thug replied with a grin. "Just walk towards me like a good little piggy and I'll put you out of your misery." He sniffed the girl's cheek, licking it disgustingly as she squirmed. "Come on. Me and the little lady are getting lonely." Chaoji bristled at the insult, seeing red and dashing forwards, all reason lost as his hair trigger rose up again at the man's actions. Behind him, a hazy, muscle-bound arm, the hand encased in a blocky gauntlet, lashed out deflecting the bullets that the man shot at him with the sound of ricocheting metal. What the hell? The thug roared, emptying the clip at the teen's face, only for another massive hand to deflect them as Chaoji's own fist rammed into his mouth, sending him staggering back. Chaoji grabbed the girl and rolled aside, laying her to the side as he walked over to the shaking form of the thug. The Bakemono. The thug whined, his face a bloody mess as he tried to ward the teen off with his depleted weapon. Team wa Bakemono. Chaoji snorted and picked up the gun, only to crush it, the pieces floating over to the arm hovering behind him. Bakemono, he repeated, spitting to the side, least I ain't a piece of dog shit. The thug thrust his arm forward, a hidden gun springing out of his sleeve, only for a massive fist to ram into his chest, smashing him into the ground and leaving a 2-foot crater. The corpse fell through the floor to the sewer below, splashing into the water out of sight. Behind Chaoji, a massive figure with gauntleted hands, an armored chestplate and metallic collar was looming behind him, right arm apparently encased in the same type of metal as the lamppost, which was steadily fading away. Damn it, the large teen cursed, bastard made me spill dinner, what am I gonna tell mom? He turned, blinking, as the inaudible voice called out to him, causing him to turn to face the girl from before, who smiled and held out a hand. You're saying you can whip up a fresh batch in no time on the house? Chaoji asked, before grinned widely and nodding enthusiastically arigato. Ono, he prodded, trying for her name. The girl smiled and bowed cutely, replying inaudibly yet again. Yatsuba Satsuki, Chaoji repeated with a smile, bowing in return, a Kimichi Chaoji desu. He replied, Yoroshiku. Naruto panted as he bent over, hands on his knees as he tried to catch his breath. Lee stood nearby, fresh as a daisy but looking on encouragingly as his kohai got the hand of things. He's been at it all day, Lee noted, an impressive feat for a beginner with little understanding of Hamon. He looked up as Naruto got to his feet, walking forwards until they were an arm's distance apart. Ready? He asked, only for Naruto to nod. Both teens moved, their arms snapping forwards in a punch, aiming for the other's face. This time, however, Naruto's eyes widened as he felt a sharp, yet small pain in his arms as his arms seemed to lengthen. My joints, he realized. I swung my arm so fast it dislocated the joints. The punch shot forwards, mimicking Lee's as they careened towards their respective targets, and keeping up the breathing not only deadens the pain, it allows you to reattach the joints afterwards. Guy smiled as both teens' fists collided against their jaws, sending both of them sprawling backwards for the first time that day. Nicely done, Naruto, he called out, walking towards them, clapping his arms, but you still have a long way to go. Naruto grinned as he rubbed his bruised jaw, looking over at Lee, who was mirroring his actions as he sat up. Finally got ya, senpai, he teased, earning a warm smile from Lee. That you did, Lee agreed, getting to his feet, but don't let it go to your head, this is only the basics after all. Naruto scoffed and waved his hands at the teen. Wakata tebeo, he assured him, but you better watch out, I'm catching up to you, senpai. Lee chuckled and ruffled the blonde's hair, earning a squawk of protest that caused Guy to laugh. Ah. Such youthful enthusiasm, he praised, fist clenched and tears sprouting from his eyes. You remind me of myself at your age, only with a better fashion sense, right? Naruto teased, causing Guy to chase him around the pool, the two of them letting off ripples to keep afloat, though Naruto was struggling due to his inexperience. Only a matter of days and he's already well into walking on water. Lee marveled, noting how the teen's feet sank less and less each time. Guy-sensei was right, Naruto has phenomenal talent for the ripple technique. The teen's sweat dropped as Naruto lost the rhythm, falling into the water with a yelp as Guy laughed his ass off. Then again, he chuckled, shaking his head, he still has a long way to go. Naruto sneezed, cursing himself for catching a cold as he made his way back to the apartment block. He was wearing one of Guy's old tracksuits, much to his shame, Lee's having been too tight. He silently thanked the gods his coat covered up most of the green monstrosity, before shaking himself and resuming the breathing exercises that Guy had taught him. He wondered, tilting his head, looks like an ambulance parked outside Shikamaru's place, wonder what's up. His eyes widened as a medic marched out, supporting a Yakuza gunman with a bullet wound in his head. Shit, he cursed, dashing towards the Nara home, grabbing an orderly by the sleeve. Oi, Austin, what the hell happened here? Buzz off, brat. The man snapped, only to be reduced to whimper as Naruto subconsciously channeled the ripple into his hand, gripping the man's arm like a pressure vice. Og, some Yakuza deadbeats attacked the house. The kid's wounded but we took him to the hospital. Naruto, a tired voice called out. Nara Shikado stepping out the doorway to see what the fuss was about. What are you doing here? Nara-san, the blonde called out, leaving the now whimpering orderly to his own devices. Where's Shikamaru? Relax, they already took him to the hospital. The tired-looking man replied, he's been clipped on the shoulder, nothing permanent, but they needed to get him sorted for blood loss. He blinked, pulling out a piece of paper from his back pocket. Speaking of which, he asked me to give you this. Naruto took the paper, blanching as the smell of blood reached his nose, opening it to discover that Shikamaru had written it in his own blood. I'm alive. Chaoji too. Thugs looking for you and anyone close to you, watch your back. If you die, don't you dare come back to haunt me. It scared the life out of my wife, Shikado muttered. Speaking of which, I need to get back to her, she's a mess right now. He paused in the doorway, eyeing the blonde carefully. I don't blame you for what's happened, Naruto. He assured the team, neither does my wife, though she may say otherwise at the minute. You didn't ask for this and you certainly wouldn't have put Shikamaru in danger. As the door shut before him, Naruto gripped the letter tightly in his hands as his knuckles went white from the pressure. Then he turned, dashing off up the road, coattails flapping behind him like outstretched wings. You bastards, the enraged Hurricane King hissed, teeth grinding together like tombstones. You picked the wrong guy to fuck around with. Things are heating up, and now the local Yakuza are going to experience firsthand how Naruto got his nickname. Also, it would appear that Shikamaru and Chaoji's stands have awoken, and Hinata's ability has been revealed, to an extent. A Mercedes-Benz drove through the night, sleek, expensive, and reeking of wealth, power, and status. Inside, 3 mobsters, the boss and 2 escorts, were calmly on their way to the warehouse for a debriefing. Still no news from the teams we sent out, the second mobster reported, putting away his phone as he looked at his boss in the rearview mirror. You sure sending 2 each was enough, boss? They're children, the boss replied. They may be associates of the Hurricane King, but they've left little impact on us themselves. He lit a cigarette, taking a deep drag before exhaling calmly. They're probably just running about like rats, giving the boys a little exercise. The bleached Osekan grinned, only to blink as a headlight flashed before him, the shadowy form of a motorcyclist apparent behind it. He muttered, what's this jackass? His eyes widened as the light hurtled towards them. Oh shit. The motorcycle rammed into the front of the Benz, causing the engine to erupt. The Osekan's screech was deadened by the airbag as it erupted from the steering wheel, the boss nearly choking as his seatbelt kept him from flying out of his seat. The person in the front passenger seat wasn't so lucky. He was propelled out the windshield, his head severed by the impact and rolling across the tarmac like a discarded football. The Osekan yelled, puncturing the airbag as he ripped off his damaged specs, his nose a bloody mess. I'm gonna blast this guy to hell. He reached into his jacket for a gun, only for it, and the hand holding it, to be smashed as something punched through the windshield. The bleached thug screeched again, just as a hand grabbed him by the neck and pulled him through what remained of the window into the night air. Yo, Naruto greeted, face a cold mask as he throttled the man, his grip like a vice. Nice night for a drive, isn't it? He then slammed the taller man onto the bonnet of the car, just as his stand rammed a piece of shrapnel into the man's shoulder, effectively nailing him there. That hurt? Naruto asked coldly, as the man's screams tore into the air. Let it all out. Scream, you're gonna die anyway. F you little punk. The thug screamed, only to receive an invisible fist in the teeth. Feel like talking now? Naruto asked. Your friends weren't so talkative, the ones at the warehouse you were driving towards. He quirked an eyebrow at the man's shocked expression. If they're lucky, they'll live long enough to be arrested. This kid. The thug whimpered, desperately trying to look away from those cold blue eyes. He isn't human. Who gave the order? Naruto demanded. I'm only asking nicely once. After that he flexed his hand, popping the joints. I'm getting creative. It wasn't me. The thug whined, wetting himself in fear as tears streaked down his cheeks. It was the boss. He's right. Bang. Naruto flinched as the side of the man's head exploded courtesy of a lead slug exiting it, just before the Benz's engine revved, causing him to step back as the boss pulled the car away. Slimy little bastard, the blonde muttered, his stand appearing at the ready. The boss cursed as he pulled out, the corpse on the bonnet flapping limply in the air as he tore down the road, fire from the destroyed motorbike catching the thug's sleeve and setting it alight. Gotta get out of here, the man thought, sweat dripping down his forehead. Must get reinforcements. Not even that monster can take on an army. Something smashed through the rear window, ramming into his head and causing him to crash the car into a street lamp, the metal structure snapping in half and crashing onto the car. Shaking his head, the boss looked up at the dash, where the severed head of his other escort lay, the shocked eyes looking back at him. Ivy, he screamed, slamming the door open and throwing himself out onto the sidewalk, only to land in front of a pair of shoes. Hey, Naruto greeted, looking down at the man like he was a cockroach. You the boss these guys were on about? He snorted as the man blubbered incomprehensibly. I'll take that as a yes. Reaching down, the blonde teen dragged the fat blob off his feet, holding him up to glare into his frightened eyes like a viper. I want to know why you thought it would be a good idea to sick your dogs on my friends, he stated, shaking the man for emphasis. Well, answer me. Why you were getting to be an obstacle. The boss yelped, clutching feebly at the teen's fingers. Why you had tea to be neutralized. Right, and you had your boys do it while you rode around in a comfy Benz. Naruto noted, living the life of luxury, like whatever happened had nothing to do with you. He rammed his fist into the man's face, dislodging half his teeth and pulping his nose at the same time. Quit your squealing, pig. The teen barked, silencing the boss's cries with a backhand slap. When a dog bites someone, it's the master who pays the price. Naruto glared at the man, who whimpered silently at the ice-cold brutality radiating from those terrifying blue orbs. Your dogs messed with my friends, he growled. Now I'm going to mess you up. Please, the man begged, tears streaking down his face as he clutched feebly at the blonde's wrists. I'll give you moan. Women, you'll never see me in this town again. I swear it. There's only two things I want from you, Naruto growled, glaring at the man coldly as he brought him face to face. First, where'd you get information on my friends? He didn't give his name, the boss replied, shaking his head desperately. He was a tall guy with silver hair. Naruto bristled at the mention of the silver hair, gripping the man's neck tighter in anger. Where is he? He growled, ignoring as the man's piss dropped to the floor from inside his pant leg. East Konoha Gakuen, the boss replied, looking around desperately. Is that it? See, can I go? Naruto glared at the wretch for a moment, before closing his eyes with a sigh. Yeah, he muttered. You can go. His eyes shot open as his stand materialized. Fists at the ready. Go straight to hell, you bastard. Muta. The mangled corpse of the boss sailed backwards, right into the wrecked frame of the Benz, just as a stray spark from the ruined lamppost ignited the gas that had pooled out from the tank. Fitting mode of transport, Naruto muttered wryly, watching as the smoke curled into the sky, considering where he's going. He turned on his heel, one hand in his coat pocket as he glared up at the sky. And you're next, he vowed, eyes narrowing menacingly. I'm coming for you, Mizuki. Mizuki chugged a beer as he sat with his feet on the desk, exhaling as he crushed the empty can. This is the life, he praised. No laws, no responsibility. He snorted. Guess I owe that brat Naruto. If it weren't for him, I'd never have found my true calling. He grinned at Iruka. The man was strung up like a pinata, arms and legs bound tight as he was suspended from the ceiling. Mizuki was sitting at the headmaster's desk, several piles of garbage, beer cans and takeout littering the floor. Why are you doing this? Iruka yelled. This is madness, Mizuki. What do you hope to gain from this? Honestly, the madman replied. Nothing much. This is just me kicking back and letting loose. He pulled another beer can out, popping the top and chugging it down. Nothing beats Yabisu except good sake. He sighed, holding up another can to Iruka. Want some? Oh right, I forgot you don't drink. The former instructor then pulled something out from behind him, earning a startled cry from Iruka. What about you? Mizuki asked the barman's severed head, the dead eyes wide with shock. You want some? Course you do. He poured the beer into the mouth of the severed head, even as it overflowed and spilled out, or drained down the hole in the neck. Iruka turned green and fought the urge to vomit, turning his head to the side as Mizuki chuckled insanely. You've no idea how refreshing this is, the former instructor stated. You go through your whole life caged in like a tiger at a zoo, only for some idiot to leave the keys in the lock, where a well-placed paw can turn them. He tossed the skull in the air like a ball, catching it as it flipped over. Then once you get out, you see all this tasty meat just waiting for you to sink your teeth into. He leered up at Iruka, who winced as he noticed the insane gleam in his former friend's eyes. Suddenly, Mizuki lifted his head, smirking as he got to his feet, tossing the head aside to slam against the wall, splitting it open like a ripe melon. The guest of honors arrived. The silver-haired psycho commented, "Let's go say hello, shall we?" Naruto glared at the gates of the school, shut tight and locked as per the norm. Climbing over with the ease of long practice, he landed on the other side and eyed the courtyard, ready for anything. He flinched as the paw system sounded, Mizuki's drawl sounding on the other end. I see you decided to join us, the instructor mocked. What kept you? I was getting bored waiting for you to show up. Naruto didn't deign to answer. He merely walked forwards, hands in his coat pockets. He'd changed into his regular clothes before coming, not wanting to ruin Guy's tracksuit, his bandana whipping in the sudden breeze. What's wrong? Mizuki taunted. The big bad Hurricane King has nothing to say. The paw shook with the sounds of the man's snickers. Poor little baby. Odds are he's in the principal's office, Naruto noted. It has the best view of the courtyard and he's definitely hot-wired the paw system. Come on, say something, Mizuki demanded, sounding annoyed. No. Guess he needs some motivation, right, sensei? Naruto scowled, only for his eyes to widen as something was hurled out the headmaster's window, coming to a stop halfway down the wall as the rope around its waist stopped its fall. Iruka-sensei, he yelled, as the man's face became visible in the moonlight, bruised and out cold, his back a bloody mess. Sensei. Answer me, sensei, so you can talk. Mizuki's voice called out, standing in the remains of the window, stripped to the waist save for a pair of leather pants and boots. Had me thinking I wouldn't get any fun tonight. He raised a hand to his ear. Now then, how about a scream? Naruto snarled, his pupils slitting and his hair bristling as he glared at the instructor with all the hatred he could muster. Mizuki, I, he roared, only for the man to smile and lean back, as if it were the evening breeze. Ah yes, most refreshing, the psycho applauded. Such anger and emotion ... just what I'd expect from a pile of trash like you. Shikamaru sighed as he was rolled into a recovery room. Despite all assurances that he was 100 fine, the damn doctors insisted he stay overnight to run some tests. Damn it, he muttered, they could at least given me something to read. He just knew the TVs were switched off at night, but he highly doubted that the orderlies would be willing to bring him anything but the month-old magazines he'd seen in the lobby. Damn it, he repeated, resting his head against the uncomfortable regulation pillow that felt like a headstone. This really sucks. Shikamaru, a familiar voce called out, causing him to look across to spy a surprised Choji resting in the bed to his left, head and ribs bandaged heavily. Fancy seeing you here, the large teen joked, wincing as his sore head throbbed. I figured you'd be home by now. Doctors are worse than mothers, Shikamaru muttered, looking up at the roof, the reason being they charge money for all the care they give you. Choji nodded, though he really had no reason to complain, since he had almost suffered a concussion, coupled with fracturing several ribs. Right now the giant teen wished he had something to munch on, but the orderlies running the night shift refused to bring him anything. Damn it, he cursed, and Sat-chan gave me a big bag to take home too. He grit his teeth as he recalled the orderly taking it off him. Bet those bastards are munching away at it right now. Something wrong, Choji? Shikamaru asked, causing the teen to look at him. You look like someone just stole the last chip from you. Choji blinked, then sighed, smiling as he recalled how easily Shikamaru could calm him down with just a few words. The lazy teen smiled in return, before sighing and resting his head on the pillow. Damn it, he cursed, shoulda grabbed a book from my room when I had the chance. He blinked as something landed at his side, looking down to find one of his favorite novels lying there. How the, he wondered, before noticing a pair of red eyes lurking in the shadows near his desk. You again. He wondered, did you get this? Who you talking to? Choji asked, raising himself up to look over his friend's shoulder, eyes widening as he noticed the red glow in near the floor. What are those eyes? You can see it, Shikamaru asked, as the specter rose out of the shadow to hover beside his bedstand like some sort of protective gargoyle. Neither of my folks or the orderlies paid it any mind. Choji nodded, losing his footing as he tried to get out of bed, only for a large hand to support him, the massive form hovering behind him concernedly. You too, huh? Shikamaru noted, eyeing the massive figure warily. Mine showed up when I was about to buy the farm. I'm guessing the same goes for you. Choji nodded, earning a moan from Shikamaru as he placed a hand over his forehead. I knew it, the lazy teen muttered. I knew it the moment we ran into each other in junior high. He glared at the ceiling in annoyance. That bastard Naruto's always getting us into trouble. He doesn't mean to, Choji offered, before his stomach let out a rumble. Aw man. Karaheda, Shikamaru sighed, shaking his head at his friend's stomach's timing, before tilting his head slightly. Those orderlies were getting ready to snack down on takeout when I last saw them. He muttered, before eyeing his shadowy apparition carefully. This thing brought a book from my house several miles away. Let's see if it can nab us some grub. The orderlies of East Konoha General Hospital sat laughing their asses off as they watched a late-night comedy on a plasma screen television. Most of the hospital funds had gone into buying it, as well as soundproofing the room so no one would find out. Hey, pass me some more of those meat buns. One yelled, that porker ain't gonna be needing them. His colleague laughed, reaching back without looking for the bag, only for a shadowy hand to grab it, pulling it into the wall. He overreached in his search and went keeling over backwards, one of his sneakers flying off and slamming into the screen, shattering it. You moron, someone screamed as the lights in the room started flickering. What the hell did you do? This is damn good stuff, Shikamaru praised, digging into a meat bun whilst Choji slurped up a hot bowl of soup. This girl's got talent. She's cute as a button too, Chaoji added, flushing as his friend eyed him out the corner of his eye. What? She is, Shikamaru scoffed, opening his book where he left off as his shadow opened a soda can for him. For once in my life, the teen muttered offhandedly, things are slightly less troublesome. Naruto grit his teeth, blood seeping out as his gums strained under the pressure. He continued to glare up at the silver-haired loony, who was leaning against the window frame, arms crossed and smiling like Hannibal in a slaughterhouse. What's wrong, Naruto-kun? Mizuki teased, sneering at the teen as he shook his head dismissively. Don't you wanna play anymore? Play? Naruto snorted, smirking wryly. Sure, let's play football. He pointed up at the man, eyes narrowed and pupils narrowed to animalistic slits. I'll bring the foot. You bring the balls. Eloquent as always, Mizuki scoffed, righting himself. But Naruto, don't think I'm the same Mizuki you knew before. With that, the psycho stepped forward, stepping out of the frame and out into empty air. Naruto's eyes widened as he fell, wondering if he was trying to scare him again, only for the man to twist in midair and land on all fours, cat-like. Surprised, Mizuki called out, rising to his feet slowly and fluidly. Like I said, don't underestimate me. He vanished. All Naruto did was blink and Mizuki vanished from sight like he'd never been there at all. Where is he? The delinquent thought wildly, only for a fist to ram into his jaw, sending him sprawling across the courtyard. What the hell? Having fun yet? Mizuki's voice taunted. What's the matter? You seem scared. He cackled madly, scared of the dark little man. Hardly, Naruto muttered, spitting out blood. But I am a little worried here. Where the hell is he? He eyed the surroundings carefully, looking for the slightest hint of movement. Gotta watch my surroundings. Have to know my enemy. Another fist rammed into the teen's stomach, sending him flying into a soda dispenser, the cans falling out and landing on his head. Oh, he muttered, getting to his feet and feeling several muscles in his body rebel at their rough treatment. That hurt. Your grasp of the obvious is humbling, Mizuki taunted, voice echoing out from all directions. Tell you what, how about I let you see me one more time, just for old time's sakes? Naruto grimaced as something began to appear not 10 feet away from him, his eyes widening as a 7-foot, muscle-bound shadow grew before him. The beast was human in shape, but from the waist up it couldn't possibly be described as human. Thick orange fur covered the creature's pelt, rippled with stripes in a familiar tiger-shaped pattern. The muscles in its arms were the size of Naruto's head, the hands large enough to clamp over it and crush it like a melon. The face was like a humanoid cat's, Mizuki's trademark smirk and silver hair topping off the appearance, tipping the blonde off as to the creature's identity. I told you, Mizuki growled, smirking down at the teen superiorly. I'm not the same man you once knew. What the hell are you? Naruto spat, eyeing the war tiger carefully as the former instructor snickered. Oh, I'm still me, Mizuki assured him, crouching down so that he was face to face with the blonde. I just evolved a little, that's all. How? When Naruto gasped, wincing at the pain in his stomach, earning another snort from the beast. Couple of days ago, Mizuki replied, after you humiliated me in front of the entire school. The beast growled at this. I met an interesting person at a bar. You say you can help me get revenge. Mizuki slurred, eyeing Duck Arse warily, unable to make out the teen's face due to the poor lighting and alcohol. What's the catch? Nothing really, the figure replied, just raise a little mayhem here and there. He shrugged, the type that'll make people stop and stare if you know what I mean. Mizuki swayed in the wind, some distant part of his brain screaming at him to run away, the alcohol soundly clubbing it over the head and having its way with it. Where do I sign? The former instructor slurred, causing the teen to flinch at the smell of his breath. Just stand over there, the teen ordered, pointing at the wall. That's it, right there. Quick as a whip, the teen pulled out a miniature crossbow, already cocked and strung, pointed it at the drunken man's chest and fired. The bolt crashed into Mizuki's chest, causing him to cry out as a charge ran through his body. Jayarg! The man screamed, as the alcohol was instantly burned out of his system, bandages unraveling rapidly. What do you do to me, you brat? He yelled, only to blink as he realized his body didn't hurt anymore. If anything, he felt stronger than ever. Successful, the figure commented, walking forward and tugging out the remains of the arrow. Make good use of this chance, I'll be watching you. Mizuki stared as the youth walked off, staring at his hands in disbelief as the door behind him opened, revealing the bartender with a bat. What the hell are you doing out here? The large man yelled. You're screaming like a struck cat. Beat it before I club you like one. Mizuki turned slowly, his incisors lengthening as he eyed the man's pulsing jugular, eyes becoming cat-like as he lunged forwards, biting into the man's neck, all the way to the bone. Ecstasy, Mizuki hissed, tilting his head back as he allowed the air to slip through his fangs. I then dumped the body in the trash and moved in. He shrugged, the massive furry shoulders rising like dunes. Had to deal with the taste of blood in my mouth for a while, but meh, you get used to it. He smirked as he licked his chops, nodding towards the limp form of Uruka. Uruka-kun's blood is especially tasty. He commented, type A, RH negative, a highly distinct sourness. The psychopath grinned as the teen trembled, head lowered, assuming Naruto was too scared to even look at his opponent, before leaning in to whisper in his ear. I can tell because the thickness and smoothness vary from type to type. He explained, they go down differently. He closed his eyes in recollection. And besides, type A is, how should I put it? Naruto's fist lashed out, only for Mizuki to lean back, grinning fairly, saw that coming brat. He mocked, you'll need to do better than FANFIC. Mizuki's taunt was cut off as Naruto's arm suddenly seemed to stretch out like some sort of elastic band, granting the teen an extra 2 feet in range as his fist rammed right into the beast's mouth, sending fangs flying in all directions and Mizuki sprawling backwards in shock. Yer tebeo, Naruto muttered, getting to his feet as his joints popped back together. You sure like the sound of your own voice, no matter what the hell you look like. The teen flexed his fingers, looking down at the startled form of Mizuki, one hand in his pocket as he pointed at Mizuki's face with the other. Got news for ya, swipe, he muttered, wind causing his coat to flap. You aren't the only one that's changed. He glared as Mizuki fought to get up. The man's jaw seemed to be dislocated from the blow, but was healing quickly. You seem to have gotten used to that damn form of yours, Naruto muttered. You're nothing more than an animal now. The blonde stepped forwards. Just as Mizuki leapt to his feet, the were-tiger snarled and rubbed his mouth, glaring at the teen in anger. You'll pay for that. The former instructor snarled, disappearing into thin air as he stepped backwards. I'll slice to ribbons. Naruto scowled as he resumed the breathing, recalling Lee and Guy's careful instruction. The ripple is easily affected by fear, he recalled. To fear is to lose the pattern. To maintain it you must master your fear. He flinched as he tried to listen out for the man's footsteps, only to blink and leap to the side as something hurtled towards him, the earth shattering under an invisible blow. I dodged, Naruto muttered. How'd I know he was coming? I can't see. He paused, before smirking. I didn't rely on my eyes, he realized. I was so worried about not being able to see him I forgot one of the basics Lee taught me, know your surroundings. He got to his feet, reaching behind his head to untie his headband, only to ready it around his eyes. Giving up, Mizuki's voice called out, his voice echoing again, wanna go out with style. He cackled, I'll finish you off in one blow. Naruto stood still as he continued the pattern, his breath pulsing through his body like waves. Behind him, uncalled for, he felt the spirit react accordingly, and the air seemed to scream out as something hurtled towards him. Everything leaves ripples, he noted. Like the stone leaving ripples in the water, humans also create ripples. He spun to backwards, dodging out of the way of an invisible fist. They make ripples in the air. Muda. Naruto's stand lashed out, smashing its fist right into the middle of Mizuki's face, causing him to crash through one of the walls of the courtyard. An eye for an eye, the delinquent called out, returning his headband back to its regular position. Isn't that the saying, Mizuki-sensei? He stepped forwards, eyeing the quivering mound of muscle impassively, his stand hovering behind him at the ready. You spilt blood, that means you have to pay back blood. See, come on, Naruto, Mizuki pleaded, eyeing the blonde in horror as the stand behind him raised a fist menacingly. You wouldn't want to be a murderer, would ya? Naruto flinched at this, before lowering his head, his stand vanishing from view. Mizuki grinned and tried to raise himself out of the wall, only for Naruto to hold up a finger. Do you know the definition of murder, sensei? The teen asked, holding up, of all things, a pocket dictionary. It says here it's the unlawful, premeditated killing of a human being by another. Smirking, blue eyes dancing in the light, Naruto pointed at the beast. Your next words will be, where'd you get that? He stated mockingly. Where'd you get that? Mizuki yelled, flinching as he realized he'd walked into the blonde's trick. Remember when you punched me in the stomach? Naruto asked. Well, I always carry one of these around before going into a gang fight. He gestured to a small knife wound on the cover, one of many. Load of bastards think they're hot shit with a knife. Tossing the book aside, Naruto walked towards the trembling beast, his stand hovering behind him, fist at the ready. And right now, he muttered, all I see before me is a big, dangerous animal, waiting to be put down. Don't kill E, Mizuki pleaded, holding out his hands desperately. Come on, let's talk this out. I don't talk to animals, Naruto muttered, before raising a finger in the air. Actually, there is one thing I have to say to you. He glared at the man, his stand's fists coming down like wrecking balls, and it goes something like this. Muda. Mizuki flew out through the wall, blood fountain off him as he screeched face first down the street to crash into the same fire hydrant as before, where coincidentally, the same dog from before decided his head was a far more deserving target. Naruto stared out at the still twitching form before eyeing his stand's fists analytically. Controlling this thing is like trying to sail through a hurricane, he noted. It's violent, powerful, and probably a few tricks up its sleeves. He smirked, clenching his fist, the stand doing the same as he smirked, with his spare hand in his pocket. Well then, he boasted, guess I'll just have to ride through the heart and see where it takes me. Well now, that's one evil stand user down. Sapelli-sama only knows how many more are left. As promised, here's the stats for Mizuki's stand. Naruto's stats will be up next time. Stand, Eye of the Tiger. User, Mizuki. Power, C speed, B range, E. Staying, A precision, D learning, D. 1 bound to Mizuki's body. 2 transforms Mizuki into a war tiger. 3 can camouflage self to become invisible and strike from anywhere. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 3. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Kyugan on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.